In 1960, Albert Camus died in a car accident at the age of 46. In his briefcase was an unfinished novel. 3 years earlier, he had won the Nobel Prize in Literature. He was at the height of his fame, his influence, his creative powers, and then suddenly he was gone. But his ideas remain, ideas about absurdity and rebellion, about living without hope, but also without despair, about finding happiness in meaningless struggle, about creating meaning in a universe that provides none. Camus was born in 1913 in Algeria to a working-class family. His father died in the First World War when Albert was less than a year old. His mother was partially deaf and illiterate. They lived in poverty in Algiers. These facts shaped everything. His philosophy emerged not from ivory towers, but from sun-baked streets, from the Mediterranean Sea, from the bodies of the poor who worked until their hands bled. Tuberculosis struck him at 17, shadowing him throughout his life with constant reminders of mortality. He wrote, he acted in theater, he worked as a journalist. During World War II, he joined the French resistance, editing the underground newspaper Combat. Tonight, we journey through the complete landscape of his thought, from the absurd awakening to final peace with existence, from Meursault's radical honesty to Sisyphus's strange happiness, from the plague in Oran to the invincible summer within. Every essential idea, every major work, every insight that makes Camus one of the most important philosophers of the 20th century. The philosophy we explore is not a system. Camus rejected philosophical systems. He rejected existentialism. Though others called him an existentialist, he called himself an absurdist. Let's find out what it means. There is a moment that comes to everyone, though not everyone recognizes it. You are performing your daily routine. You wake up. You prepare for work. You commute. You work. You return home. You eat. You sleep. The pattern repeats day after day, week after week, year after year. Then one day, in the middle of this routine, something shifts. A question forms in your mind. Why am I doing this? What is the point? At first, you answer with the usual responses. You work to earn money. You earn money to live. You live because... Here the answer becomes more difficult. Because life is precious, because you have responsibilities, because you fear death. But why is life precious? Why do these responsibilities matter? Why fear death if life is just repetition? The questions multiply. They cascade. Suddenly, the solid ground of meaning beneath your feet feels less solid. You look at your reflection in the mirror and see a stranger. You speak words you have spoken 1,000 times and they sound hollow. The faces around you seem like masks. Everything familiar becomes strange. This is what Camus called the absurd. It is not a philosophy you learn. It is an experience that happens to you. The absurd is the confrontation between the human need for meaning and the universe's silence in response to that need. We are meaning-seeking creatures. We cannot help ourselves. We ask why. We demand purpose. We construct narratives to explain our existence. We create religions, philosophies, ideologies, all attempting to answer the fundamental questions. Why are we here? What should we do? What happens when we die? But the universe does not answer. It continues in its mechanical processes, indifferent to our questions. Stars burn and die, planets orbit, atoms collide. Life emerges, struggles, reproduces, and ends. There is no cosmic voice explaining the purpose of it all. There is no hidden message in the structure of reality. There is only silence. The absurd is the space between our questions and the universe's silence. It is the tension between what we want, clarity and meaning, and what we get, nothing. Camus wrote, "At any street corner, the feeling of absurdity can strike any man in the face. It can happen anywhere. You are standing in line at a store, you are sitting in traffic, you are at a funeral, you are holding your newborn child. Suddenly, the veil lifts, you see clearly. None of this has inherent meaning. We are all going through motions in a universe that does not care." This recognition is not madness, it is lucidity. Most people live their entire lives without truly confronting the absurd. They stay busy. They distract themselves. They adopt ready-made meanings from religion or society or tradition. They never stop long enough to ask the dangerous questions. But once you have seen the absurd, you cannot unsee it. The question becomes, how do you live with this knowledge? How do you continue existing when existence itself seems pointless? Many people, when confronted with the absurd, retreat. They return to their previous beliefs with renewed fervor. They embrace religion more tightly. They throw themselves into their work. They tell themselves the questions were just a phase, a moment of weakness or depression. Others despair. They conclude that if life has no inherent meaning, then nothing matters. They become nihilists. They withdraw from the world or destroy themselves. Camus rejected both responses. The absurd, he argued, is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be lived. The point is not to escape the absurd through false hope or to surrender to it through despair. The point is to acknowledge it fully and to live anyway, perhaps even to live more fully because of it. This is the beginning of Camus' philosophy. Everything else follows from this recognition. The absurd is not the end, it is the starting point. The stranger's truth, Meursault, and emotional honesty. In 1942, readers in occupied France opened a slim novel called The Stranger. The first line read, "Mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I don't know." The narrator is Meursault, a French Algerian clerk. He has just received a telegram informing him of his mother's death in an old people's home. He travels to the home for the funeral. He does not cry. He smokes cigarettes. He drinks coffee with milk. He sits up all night with the body but feels nothing. The next day, after the funeral, he goes swimming. He meets a woman named Marie, a former co-worker. They go to a movie, a comedy. They laugh. They begin a sexual relationship. When Marie asks if he loves her, he says probably not, but they can get married if she wants. Everything about Meursault disturbs us. He seems emotionally flat. He does not react to his mother's death the way we expect. He does not pretend to feelings he does not have. He acts according to his immediate physical sensations. The sun is hot, the water is cool, the woman is attractive, the coffee tastes good. He befriends a neighbor, Raymond, who is arguably a pimp and certainly abusive to women. Meursault writes a letter for Raymond designed to lure back an Arab woman Raymond wants to punish. Does Meursault think this is wrong? The question does not seem to occur to him. Raymond asks for help. Meursault helps. The central event of the novel happens on a beach. Meursault, Raymond, and Raymond's friend encounter two Arabs, one the brother of the woman Raymond abused. There is a confrontation. Raymond is cut with a knife. Later, Meursault returns to the beach alone. He encounters one of the Arabs again. The sun is blinding. The heat is overwhelming. The Arab has a knife. The light reflects off the blade. Meursault shoots him. Then, after a pause, he shoots 4 more times into the motionless body. Why did he kill the Arab? This is the question everyone asks at his trial. Meursault cannot give a satisfactory answer. The sun was hot. The light was blinding. His head hurt. He was uncomfortable. These are not reasons. These are not motives that make sense. At the trial, the prosecutor focuses not on the murder, but on Meursault's behavior at his mother's funeral. He did not cry. He smoked. He drank coffee. The day after, he went swimming and started an affair. What kind of son does this? What kind of man? The prosecutor argues that Meursault is a monster without human feelings. The evidence is not just the murder, but his entire way of being. He does not love his mother. He does not love Marie. He has no remorse. He is a threat to society. Meursault sits through the trial feeling like it is happening to someone else. He barely defends himself. His lawyer tries to construct a narrative of the crime that makes sense, a story of temporary insanity or self-defense. But Meursault will not help. He will not pretend to emotions he did not feel. He will not create a coherent story where none exists. He is convicted and sentenced to death. In his cell waiting for execution, he finally becomes angry. A chaplain visits and tries to get him to turn to God, to repent. Meursault explodes. He does not want false consolation. He does not want to pretend there is meaning or justice or divine plan. He has lived honestly. He has felt what he felt and nothing more. He will not lie now to make his death easier. In his final moments, Meursault achieves a kind of peace. He accepts the benign indifference of the universe. He realizes he has been happy. He hopes for a large crowd at his execution, watching with cries of hate. Even this would be a form of connection, an acknowledgement of his existence. What is Camus showing us through Meursault? Not a hero, not a model for behavior, but something important about honesty and social performance. Most people live according to social scripts. When your mother dies, you cry, you look sad, you speak about how much you loved her. Whether you genuinely feel these emotions is less important than performing them. Society expects certain reactions. We provide them. We say, "I love you," when it is expected. We express enthusiasm we do not feel. We pretend to care about things we do not care about. We construct narratives about ourselves that make sense to others. We are always performing, always wearing masks. Meursault refuses to perform. He is radically honest about his inner life, or rather about his lack of inner life as others conceive it. He does not feel grand emotions. He feels physical sensations. He exists in the immediate present. He does not construct meaning narratives. He simply is. Society cannot tolerate this. The prosecutor is right in a sense. Meursault is a threat, not because he killed a man, though that is the official reason. He is a threat because he exposes the arbitrary nature of social meanings. He shows that all our performances, our emotional displays, our meaning-making are not grounded in anything solid. They are conventions we maintain collectively, but they are not truths. The title of the novel is crucial. Meursault is a stranger, but stranger to whom? To society, yes, but also to himself in a way. He does not understand himself through psychological narrative. He does not know why he does what he does. He exists without the stories we tell to make ourselves coherent. And perhaps he is also revealing that we are all strangers, strangers to each other, strangers to ourselves, strangers in an indifferent universe. Camus is not saying we should all behave like Meursault. The novel is not a prescription. It is a thought experiment. What would it look like to live without social pretense? What would happen if someone refused to pretend emotions or meanings they did not feel? The answer? Society would destroy them. We cannot function without shared meanings, even if those meanings are arbitrary. But recognizing they are arbitrary, recognizing that we are performing, this is part of seeing the absurd clearly. Meursault lives in the present moment. He does not dwell on the past or worry about the future. He responds to immediate physical reality. The sun is hot, the water is cool. This simple existence, free from psychological drama and narrative meaning-making, has a strange purity. But it is also inhuman in a sense. We are storytelling creatures. We need narrative. We need connection. Meursault's honesty isolates him completely. He is free from social pretense, but also free from genuine connection. When Marie asks if he loves her, his honest answer destroys the possibility of real intimacy. There is a tragedy here. The choice seems to be between comforting lies and isolating truth. Can we live honestly and still connect with others? Can we see the absurd clearly and still participate in human community? These questions run through all of Camus' work. Meursault represents one extreme answer, radical honesty at the cost of everything else. But Camus will explore other ways of living with the absurd, ways that preserve both honesty and solidarity. For now, The Stranger shows us what we are up against. The universe is indifferent, social meanings are arbitrary. Honest self-examination reveals we are often strangers to ourselves. And yet we must continue, we must live, we must find some way forward. The myth of Sisyphus, the eternal rock. There is an ancient Greek myth about a man named Sisyphus. He was a king, known for his cunning and deceit. When death came for him, Sisyphus tricked death and chained him up. For a time, no one could die. The gods were furious. They eventually freed death and punished Sisyphus severely. His punishment in the underworld was this: he must push a large boulder up a steep mountain. When he reaches the summit, the boulder rolls back down. He must descend and push it up again. This continues forever. For all eternity, Sisyphus performs this futile labor. The rock always rolls back down. The effort is never complete. The task has no end and no purpose. This is the image Camus placed at the center of his philosophy. In 1942, the same year as The Stranger, he published an essay called The Myth of Sisyphus. The opening sentence states, "There is only one really serious philosophical question, and that is suicide." Why begin with suicide? Because once you recognize the absurd, once you see that life has no inherent meaning, the question becomes urgent. Why continue? If nothing matters, if all our efforts amount to nothing, if we all die and are forgotten, why not end it now? This is not a morbid question. It is the fundamental question. Everything else, all other philosophical inquiry, assumes that life is worth continuing. But why should we make that assumption? Camus considers various answers. Religion says life has divine purpose. We must fulfill God's plan. But Camus does not believe in God. That answer is closed to him. Philosophy offers various meanings: the pursuit of truth, the creation of beauty, the advancement of human knowledge. But in an indifferent universe, why should these pursuits matter? The existentialists, like Kierkegaard, made what Camus called a philosophical suicide. They recognized the absurd, but then leapt into faith, embracing God or some transcendent meaning without rational justification. This leap solves the problem of the absurd by denying it. It is an escape. Camus rejects this. If we recognize the absurd clearly, we must not then turn away. We must not seek false consolation. We must not pretend there are answers when there are none. But we also must not surrender to despair. Physical suicide is an admission of defeat. It says the absurd has won. It says that because life is meaningless, it is not worth living. But this too is an escape, an abdication. Camus proposes a third way, revolt. We acknowledge the absurd. We do not flee from it through hope or faith. We do not surrender to it through suicide. Instead, we defy it. We continue to live, fully aware of the meaninglessness. And in that continued living, we rebel against the absurd condition. This is where Sisyphus becomes important. Sisyphus is aware of his fate. He knows the rock will roll back down. He knows his labor is futile. There is no hope of completion, no possibility of success. And yet, he continues. He pushes the rock up the mountain again and again. Most interpretations of the myth see Sisyphus as tragic, perhaps the most tragic figure in mythology. His punishment is perfect because it is utterly meaningless. He suffers without purpose, struggles without achievement, labors without rest. But Camus offers a different interpretation. He asks us to imagine Sisyphus happy. How can Sisyphus be happy? His situation is the definition of futility, yet Camus argues that Sisyphus can be happy precisely because he is conscious of his condition. He knows the rock will roll down. He has no illusions. He does not hope for a different outcome. He accepts his fate completely. In accepting his fate, Sisyphus becomes superior to it. The gods designed this punishment to crush his spirit. They wanted him to suffer the torment of futile effort. But if Sisyphus accepts the futility, if he even embraces it, then the punishment loses its power. The gods cannot make him suffer if he chooses not to suffer. More than this, Sisyphus has his rock. It is his. This absurd labor is his life, and he lives it fully. He is not waiting for something else. He is not hoping for rescue or redemption. He is present in each moment of pushing the rock. The struggle itself fills his existence. Camus writes, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. This is crucial. Not the achievement, not reaching the summit, but the struggle, the effort, the continued defiance." Consider the moment when Sisyphus walks back down the mountain. The rock has rolled to the bottom. He must descend to begin again. This is the moment of consciousness. This is when he sees his situation most clearly. The rock is down there. He is up here. Soon he will push it up again, and it will roll down again. Nothing changes. Nothing progresses. This moment of descent could be one of despair, but Camus suggests it is the moment of triumph. In this pause, walking down the mountain, Sisyphus is free. He is superior to his fate because he knows it completely and accepts it. He is not deceived. He is not hoping. He is simply there, conscious and alive. The myth of Sisyphus is the myth of human existence. We are all pushing rocks up mountains. We work jobs that must be done again tomorrow. We clean houses that will get dirty. We build things that will decay. We create meanings that will be forgotten. We live lives that will end. Everything we do is temporary. Nothing lasts. From one perspective, this is tragic. All our efforts amount to nothing. We are all Sisyphus, laboring under a cosmic punishment. But from another perspective, this is liberating. If nothing we do has ultimate meaning, then we are free to create our own meanings. If the universe does not care, then we are not bound by cosmic purposes. We can choose what matters to us. Sisyphus does not push the rock because it will accomplish something. He pushes it because that is what he does. It is his task. And in fully committing to that task, without illusions or hope of escape, he finds a kind of satisfaction. This is Camus's answer to the absurd. Not hope, not faith, not escape, but full engagement with life despite its meaninglessness, living with intensity, living in the present moment, accepting our condition and defying it simultaneously. The absurd does not destroy meaning, it transforms it. Meaning becomes not something we discover in the universe, but something we create through our choices and actions. We are meaning-making creatures in a meaningless universe. This is the absurd condition, but it is also our freedom. Sisyphus has no hope, and that is precisely why he can be happy. Hope is always directed toward the future, toward something other than what is. Hope means you are not fully present. You are waiting for conditions to change. But if you abandon hope, if you accept what is completely, you can be fully present in each moment. This does not mean resignation. It means clear-sighted engagement. Sisyphus is not resigned to his fate. He actively pushes the rock, but he does so without the illusion that this time will be different. He knows what will happen and he does it anyway. We must imagine Sisyphus happy because happiness does not depend on circumstances. It does not depend on achieving goals or fulfilling purposes. It depends on how we relate to our existence. Sisyphus owns his life. It may be absurd, but it is his. No one can take that from him. The rock will roll down. We will die. Everything ends. But before the end, there is the struggle. There is the effort. There is the consciousness of being alive. And that, Camus suggests, is enough. Imagining Sisyphus happy, the revolutionary paradox. The statement seems impossible. How can Sisyphus be happy? His existence is the very definition of meaningless suffering. The gods designed his punishment specifically to be unendurable, and yet Camus insists we must imagine him happy. This is not optimism. It is not positive thinking. It is something more profound. Consider what happiness means. Usually we think of happiness as a state achieved through favorable circumstances. You are happy because you get what you want. You achieve your goals, your relationships are satisfying, your basic needs are met. Happiness is the result of external conditions aligning with internal desires, but this kind of happiness is fragile. It depends on circumstances beyond your control. When circumstances change, happiness evaporates. You spend your life chasing conditions that will make you happy, but those conditions are always temporary. Nothing lasts. Camus proposes a different kind of happiness, not happiness as the absence of suffering or the fulfillment of desires, but happiness as a state of being fully present and alive. Happiness as engagement with existence on its own terms. Sisyphus cannot change his circumstances. The rock will always roll down, but he can change his relationship to those circumstances. He can cease waiting for rescue. He can stop hoping for a different outcome. He can accept what is and commit fully to it. This acceptance is not defeat. It is the opposite of defeat. By accepting his fate, Sisyphus removes the power of the gods to make him suffer. They can control his circumstances, but not his inner state. They can give him a meaningless task, but they cannot force him to experience it as meaningless. Meaning comes from commitment. When Sisyphus pushes the rock, fully engaged in the effort, not thinking about the futility or hoping for a different result, just pushing, he creates meaning through his action. The meaning is not in the outcome. It is in the act itself. Think about your own life. How much time do you spend doing things you do not want to do, hoping to eventually reach a point where you can do what you want? You work a job you dislike to earn money for some future enjoyment. You endure the present for the sake of an imagined future. You are always somewhere else mentally, not here. But the future never arrives in the way you imagine. When it becomes the present, you are still waiting for some other future. Your life passes in this state of waiting, of not being fully engaged with what you are doing right now. Sisyphus does not wait. He has no future to wait for. He has only now, and now, and now, each moment of pushing the rock. In this forced present tense existence, he is more alive than those of us who live in perpetual anticipation. Camus describes three characteristics of the absurd life: revolt, freedom, and passion. These are the consequences of recognizing the absurd and choosing to live anyway. Revolt means refusing to accept easy consolations. It means staying conscious of the absurd without turning away. Most people cannot tolerate this consciousness. They sedate themselves with hope, faith, routine, distraction. They avoid the fundamental questions. Revolt means keeping those questions alive, maintaining awareness of your condition. Freedom comes from the collapse of hope. As long as you hope for something other than what is, you are bound by that hope. You are constrained by your desires for a different life, a different self, a different world. When you abandon hope, when you accept that this is it, there is no other life coming, you become free. Free to choose what you will do with the life you have. Free from the burden of ultimate purposes or cosmic meanings. Passion means living intensely. Since there is no other life, no afterlife, no reincarnation, no ultimate redemption, this life becomes infinitely precious. Each moment is all you have. The absurd man, Camus says, does not live as if he has eternity. He lives as if he has only today. Sisyphus embodies all three. He revolts by continuing to push the rock despite its futility. He is free because he has no hope of escape and thus no reason to be anywhere but fully present with his task. He is passionate because the struggle itself fills his existence completely. The paradox is that meaninglessness becomes liberating. If the universe has no inherent purpose for your life, then you are free to create your own purposes. You are not bound by what you should do according to some cosmic plan. There is no cosmic plan. You can do what you choose. But this freedom is terrifying. Most people desperately want to be told what life means, what they should do, how they should live. They want authority, divine or otherwise, to give them direction. The absence of such authority feels like abandonment. Camus says we must mature beyond this need. We must become comfortable with our own freedom. We must accept that we are alone in creating meaning. Sisyphus has matured in this way. He knows no one is coming to save him. No God will intervene. The rock is his, the mountain is his, the task is his. He owns his existence completely, and in that ownership, despite the absurdity, he finds satisfaction. The happiness of Sisyphus is not giddy joy. It is not pleasure or contentment in any conventional sense. It is deeper. It is the satisfaction of existing fully, of being completely present, of defying meaninglessness through continued engagement. You can experience this in your own life. Think of a time when you were completely absorbed in an activity. Maybe physical labor, maybe creating something, maybe playing a sport. You were not thinking about the future or the past. You were not judging whether the activity was meaningful or meaningful. You were simply doing it, fully present. In those moments, the question of meaning does not arise. You are too busy living to worry about whether life has purpose. The doing is its own justification. This is the happiness Camus points toward. Not a happiness that comes from achieving goals or having favorable circumstances, but a happiness that comes from being fully alive in the present moment, engaged with your existence regardless of its ultimate meaning or lack thereof. Sisyphus knows something we often forget. The destination is not the point. Reaching the top of the mountain is not the goal, because the rock will just roll back down. The point is the journey, the struggle, the effort. The point is being alive enough to push the rock. We waste our lives waiting to reach some imagined destination where life will finally make sense or finally be worth living. We tell ourselves we will be happy when we achieve this goal, when we reach that milestone, when conditions are different. But Sisyphus teaches us that there is no destination. There is only the path, and either you walk it fully engaged or you waste your time wishing you were somewhere else. The gods thought they were punishing Sisyphus with futility, but they gave him something else. A task that can never be completed and thus can never disappoint. He will never fail because failure is impossible. He will never succeed because success is impossible. He is free from the tyranny of outcomes. All that remains is the effort, and he can give himself to that effort completely. This is the revolutionary paradox at the heart of Camus' philosophy. The recognition of meaninglessness, instead of leading to despair, leads to liberation. The absence of cosmic purpose, instead of making life worthless, makes it infinitely precious because it is all we have. The futility of our efforts, instead of paralyzing us, frees us to engage fully without the burden of ultimate consequences. We must imagine Sisyphus happy, because imagining him happy means recognizing that happiness does not depend on circumstances we cannot control. It depends on how we meet those circumstances. It depends on consciousness, on choice, on commitment. And these are always within our power, no matter what rock we must push or what mountain we must climb. Suicide, the one truly serious philosophical problem. The first page of the myth of Sisyphus makes a stark claim. Judging whether life is worth living is the fundamental question of philosophy. Everything else is secondary. You can debate ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, but those debates assume you have chosen to continue existing. The first choice, before all others, is whether to be or not to be. Camus is not advocating suicide. He is stating a fact. Every morning you wake up, you make a choice. You could end your life today. You do not. Why not? For most people, the question never arises consciously. They continue living because they have always lived. It is habit. Or they continue because of instinct, the biological drive to survive. Or they continue because they fear death or fear the pain of dying or fear what comes after. Or they continue because of social obligations, because others depend on them. But none of these are philosophical reasons. None of these address the question, in an absurd universe, in a life without inherent meaning, why should I continue to exist? The question becomes urgent once you recognize the absurd. If nothing matters ultimately, if all our efforts lead nowhere, if we are temporary beings in an indifferent universe, then what is the point of continuing? Religious traditions have clear answers. Life is a gift from God. You must not throw it away. Or life is a test, and suicide means failing the test. Or there is an afterlife, and the conditions of that afterlife depend on how you live and die in this life. These answers work if you believe them, but Camus does not believe them. Some philosophies argue that life has inherent value, that existence is better than non-existence as a matter of principle. But on what basis? In an absurd universe, why should existence be valued over non-existence? Some say we should live for others, for our families or communities. Our lives have meaning through connection and contribution. But this pushes the question back one step. Why should others continue? Why should the human species continue? If all of us are absurd beings in an absurd universe, what does it matter whether humanity exists or not? Camus considers these questions seriously. He does not dismiss them. He recognizes that the recognition of the absurd makes suicide a logical consideration. If life is meaningless, and if the condition of living is to struggle with that meaninglessness, why endure it? Some philosophers have chosen suicide. Others have advocated for it in certain circumstances. Camus mentions Kierkegaard's leap of faith as a kind of philosophical suicide, abandoning reason for belief. He sees this as a failure of nerve, an inability to live with the absurd. But physical suicide is also a failure. It is an admission that the absurd is unbearable. It gives the final victory to the absurd condition. It says that because life has no meaning, it is not worth living. But this conclusion is not inevitable. Camus argues that the recognition of absurdity should lead not to suicide, but to its opposite, a more intense commitment to living. Precisely because life has no inherent meaning, precisely because we will die and be forgotten, precisely because nothing we do matters ultimately, we should live more fully. This seems counterintuitive, but consider the logic. If life had ultimate meaning, if there were cosmic purposes we must fulfill, then your life would not be entirely yours. You would be constrained by those purposes, you would be judged against those meanings, you could succeed or fail at living correctly. But if there is no ultimate meaning, then your life is completely yours. No one can tell you that you are living incorrectly because there is no correct way. You are free to create your own meaning, to choose your own values, to live according to your own lights. The absence of imposed meaning is liberating. It removes the burden of cosmic significance. You do not have to be anything in particular. You do not have to achieve anything in particular. You simply have to choose what you will do with the time you have. Suicide, then, is a premature abandonment of this freedom. It says that because there is no external meaning, you cannot create internal meaning. But why not? You are alive. You are conscious. You can experience and act and choose. Why not do so? Camus points out that suicide, while it ends suffering, also ends the possibility of anything else. It ends joy, connection, beauty, effort, consciousness. It solves the problem of the absurd by eliminating the person for whom it is a problem. But this is too easy. It is an escape. The challenge is to live with the absurd, to remain conscious of it, to not flee into false hopes or comforting lies, and yet to continue living, to engage fully with existence, to create meaning moment by moment, even while knowing that meaning is not inherent or eternal. This requires courage. It is much easier to either kill yourself or to embrace some ideology that promises ultimate meaning. What is difficult is to stand in the middle, acknowledging the absurd and living anyway. Camus writes that the point is to live solely with what one knows, to accommodate oneself to what is, and to bring in nothing that is not certain. This is a discipline. It means resisting the temptation to invent meanings or to pretend certainties you do not have. It means living with uncertainty and meaninglessness as permanent conditions. But living this way, you discover something. The absence of ultimate meaning does not make individual moments meaningless. The taste of food, the warmth of sun, the laughter of friends, the satisfaction of work completed, these have their own immediate value. They do not need to be justified by reference to some greater purpose. You can enjoy a meal even though you will be hungry again tomorrow. You can love someone even though you will both die. You can create art even though it will be forgotten. The temporariness does not negate the experience. In fact, it intensifies it. Because it is temporary, because it will not last, it is precious. This is why suicide is a mistake. It throws away the possibility of these moments. It says that because nothing lasts, nothing is worth experiencing. But this does not follow. Temporary does not mean worthless. Think about a beautiful sunset. It lasts for minutes. Then it is gone. Does its brevity make it meaningless? Or does its brevity make it more beautiful, more precious, because you know it will not last? Your life is like that sunset, brief, temporary, ultimately forgotten. But right now, in this moment, it is happening. You are conscious, you are alive, and that has its own value, independent of whether it matters cosmically. Camus concludes that we must reject suicide not because life has inherent meaning, but precisely because it does not. The absurd condition is the condition of human existence. To escape through suicide is to surrender. To live despite the absurd is to rebel. This rebellion is not dramatic. It does not change anything about the absurd condition. The universe remains indifferent. Life remains meaningless ultimately. But you remain conscious, alive, engaged. You push your rock up the mountain knowing it will roll down. You do it anyway. This is the answer to the question of suicide. Not because of hope, not because of faith, not because life is sacred or existence is inherently valuable, but because to continue in the face of absurdity is the ultimate act of defiance. It is the assertion of your freedom and your dignity as a conscious being. You live not for some future reward or ultimate purpose. You live because you choose to, because you can, because while you are alive, you might as well be fully alive. The alternative is to give up, to let the absurd win. And that, Camus suggests, is unacceptable. So you wake up each morning and make the choice again. Today I will live. Today I will engage with existence on its own terms. Today I will push the rock up the mountain, not because it will accomplish anything ultimate, but because I am here, I am conscious, and this is what I choose to do. Living without appeal, existence without God. Throughout human history, most people have lived with the assumption that the universe has meaning, that life has purpose, that someone or something cares about human existence. Various religions provide different answers, but they share a common structure. There is more to reality than what we see, and that invisible dimension gives significance to our visible lives. God or gods exist. They created the universe. They have purposes for humanity. They care about how we live. They judge us. They offer eternal life or punishment or reincarnation or enlightenment. The details differ, but the core remains. You are not alone. Your life matters cosmically. There are answers to your deepest questions. For Camus, this assumption is no longer available. He does not argue against the existence of God. He simply notes that there is no evidence, that the universe appears indifferent, that prayers go unanswered, that the cosmic silence suggests we are alone. This is not a comfortable position. Humans have powerful psychological needs that religion satisfies. We want to believe death is not the end. We want to believe suffering has purpose. We want to believe good is rewarded and evil punished. We want to believe someone loves us unconditionally. We want to believe our lives matter. Religion provides these assurances. It tells us we are special, created in God's image, beloved, watched over. It promises that justice will prevail eventually, if not in this life, then in the next. It gives rules for living that are not arbitrary, but grounded in divine will. It offers community, ritual, tradition, meaning. To live without these assurances is difficult. Camus calls it living without appeal. There is no higher court to which you can appeal for meaning or justice or consolation. You cannot pray for intervention. You cannot hope for divine rescue. You cannot believe that everything happens for a reason. You cannot trust that wrongs will be righted in some cosmic ledger. You are simply here, alive, conscious, in a universe that does not care whether you exist or how you suffer or what you achieve. When you die, you end. There is no afterlife. There is no reunion with loved ones. There is no divine judgment. There is nothing. You return to the unconsciousness from which you came. This is the condition Camus asks us to face honestly. No comforting stories, no wishful thinking, no intellectual gymnastics to preserve the possibility of God. Just the facts as they appear. We are alive. We will die. The universe is indifferent. Many people cannot tolerate this vision. They experience it as nihilistic, depressing, life-denying. If there is no God, they say, then nothing matters. Morality becomes arbitrary. Life becomes pointless. Why not just do whatever you want? Why care about anything? Camus anticipated this response. He saw that the death of God, as Nietzsche proclaimed, created a crisis of meaning, but he did not think the response should be despair or nihilism. He thought the response should be maturity. Childhood means having parents who take care of you, who give you rules, who tell you what is right and wrong, who promise to protect you. Adulthood means taking responsibility for yourself, making your own decisions, accepting that no one is coming to save you. Humanity, Camus suggests, must grow up. We must stop looking to the sky for a cosmic parent to tell us how to live. We must accept that we are on our own, that we must create our own meanings and values, that we are responsible for ourselves and each other. This is not depressing, it is empowering. Yes, the universe does not care, but that means you are free. You are not bound by divine commandments. You are not fulfilling some cosmic purpose. You are not working toward an eternal reward or avoiding eternal punishment. You are simply here with choices to make and experiences to have. What should you do with this freedom? Camus does not provide a detailed answer because there is no single answer. Each person must decide, but he suggests some principles. First, honesty. Do not lie to yourself about your condition. Do not invent comforting fictions. Face reality as it is, absurd, indifferent, temporary. This honesty is painful but necessary. It is the foundation of authentic living. Second, rebellion. Do not accept the absurd passively. Do not surrender to meaninglessness. Create your own meaning through your choices and actions. Engage fully with life, even though it is ultimately futile. This is the revolt of consciousness against its condition. Third, solidarity. You are not the only conscious being facing the absurd. Every other person struggles with the same condition. You are connected through this shared struggle. You can choose to help each other, to reduce suffering, to create beauty, to make life more bearable for everyone. Living without appeal means living without guaranteed meaning, but it does not mean living without any meaning. It means the meanings are yours to create. They are not eternal or cosmic, but they are real in the moment. You can love someone even though love is not ordained by God. You can create art even though no divine audience watches. You can work for justice even though the universe is not just. You can find joy in simple pleasures even though pleasure is temporary. The absence of God does not negate these experiences. It does not make them worthless. It changes their source and their justification. They are not valuable because God values them. They are valuable because you value them, because you are alive and conscious and capable of valuing. This is what it means to live without appeal. You cannot appeal to a higher authority to tell you what your life should mean. You cannot appeal to God for rescue from suffering. You cannot appeal to divine justice to right wrongs. You are responsible. You must decide. You must act. Camus knew this was a difficult teaching. He knew most people would prefer the consolations of religion. He did not condemn religious belief harshly. He understood its appeal, but he thought intellectual honesty required acknowledging that these beliefs are not supported by evidence, that they are wishful thinking, that they are escapes from the absurd rather than confrontations with it. For those who can accept living without appeal, there is a kind of nobility. You stand alone, without divine backing, and you create meaning anyway. You love, you work, you fight for what you believe in, knowing there is no cosmic vindication coming. You do it because you choose to, because you are here and you might as well engage with existence fully. This is existential maturity. It is accepting your condition without complaint or false hope. It is recognizing that no one else, divine or otherwise, will give your life meaning. That is your job, and you can do it precisely because you are free, because the universe has no predetermined plan for you. Living without appeal is not comfortable, but it is honest. And for Camus, honesty is the foundation of everything else. You cannot build a meaningful life on comfortable lies. You must start with the truth, however stark. You are alone, you will die. Nothing guarantees meaning or justice or love. Given that truth, what will you do? How will you live? The answer is entirely up to you, and that, Camus suggests, is the most profound freedom there is. The plague arrives, Oran under quarantine. In April, the rats began dying. In the coastal city of Oran, Algeria, they emerged from sewers and basements, staggered into streets, and died by the thousands. The citizens found this distasteful, but not alarming. The city administration ordered the rats collected and burned. Soon, there were no more rats. Then people began dying, a fever, swelling in the lymph nodes, delirium, death within days. The doctors recognized the symptoms but could not believe them. Plague had not appeared in this region for centuries. It belonged to history, to medieval Europe, not to a modern French colonial city in the 20th century. But the deaths multiplied, the hospitals filled, the authorities could no longer deny what was happening. The city was experiencing an outbreak of bubonic plague. In a desperate measure, the government sealed the city. No one could enter or leave. Oran was quarantined, cut off from the outside world. This is the premise of Camus's 1947 novel, The Plague. On its surface, the book describes an epidemic and the city's response. But Camus intended something more. The plague is a metaphor for the absurd, for any force that disrupts normal life and reveals the arbitrary nature of existence. The novel is narrated by Dr. Bernard Rieu, a physician who treats plague victims throughout the crisis. Rieu is a careful observer. He describes events with precision, avoiding dramatic interpretation. The tone is documentary, almost clinical. This is not a heroic adventure, but a record of how ordinary people respond to extraordinary circumstances. At first, the citizens deny the plague. They cannot believe it is happening. They minimize the deaths. They assume the situation will resolve quickly. They continue their routines as much as possible. They plan for the future as if nothing fundamental has changed. This denial is a natural response to the absurd. When reality becomes unbearable, we retreat into familiar patterns. We tell ourselves things will return to normal soon. We refuse to acknowledge the full extent of the disruption. But the plague does not care about denial. It spreads. More people die. The hospitals cannot accommodate all the sick. The morgues cannot handle all the bodies. The city must requisition buildings for emergency hospitals and dig mass graves. Gradually, the citizens realize this is not temporary. The plague will not end quickly. They are trapped in Oran indefinitely. Families are separated. Those who happen to be traveling when the quarantine began cannot return. Those inside cannot leave. Life as they knew it has ceased. The city enters a state of suspended animation. Businesses close, schools shut down, public gatherings are banned. The citizens exist in isolation, waiting for an end that does not come. Months pass, then a year. The plague becomes the new normal, the permanent condition of life in Oran. Camus describes the psychological effects carefully. At first, fear and panic, then a kind of numbness. The citizens adapt to the plague. They accept that people will die, that life is dangerous, that tomorrow is uncertain. They stop thinking about the past or the future. They exist in the perpetual present of survival. This is life under the absurd made literal. The plague strips away all pretense of cosmic order or divine protection. People die randomly. Children die. Good people die. Bad people survive. There is no pattern, no justice, no meaning to who lives and who dies. The plague exposes the illusion of control. Before, the citizens believed they controlled their lives through work, planning, prudence. Now they see that control was always an illusion. Random events, forces beyond human understanding, determine fate. You can take precautions, but ultimately, you are vulnerable. Some citizens respond to this recognition with despair. They give up. They wait for death passively. Others respond with frantic pleasure-seeking. If death can come at any moment, they will enjoy what they can while they can. They drink, they gamble, they seek distractions. But a few respond differently. They choose to fight the plague, knowing the fight is likely futile. They volunteer in hospitals, they organize sanitation teams, they care for the sick, they work to reduce suffering even though they cannot eliminate the plague. Dr. Rieu is one of these. He treats patients day after day, knowing most will die. He cannot cure the plague. He can only relieve symptoms, provide some comfort, bear witness. The work is exhausting and dangerous. He is exposed to infection constantly. Many of his colleagues die, yet he continues. Why? Not because he has hope of defeating the plague, not because he believes in divine providence or ultimate justice, not because he thinks his work is cosmically significant. He continues because it is what he can do. There are people suffering. He is a doctor. He helps them. The choice is simple. This is Camus' model for living with the absurd. You cannot eliminate the absurd condition. The plague, like mortality and meaninglessness, is part of existence. You cannot escape it, but you can choose how you respond. You can give up, you can distract yourself, or you can engage with reality on its own terms. Engaging means acknowledging the absurd honestly and then acting anyway. It means working without hope of ultimate success, but also without despair. It means doing what you can do, what your conscience and your skills allow, and finding satisfaction in the effort itself rather than in results. The quarantine also creates a kind of solidarity. The citizens are all trapped together. They share a common fate. Class differences matter less. Everyone is vulnerable. Everyone is afraid. In this shared condition, a community emerges. Before the plague, Oran was a city of strangers. People lived separate lives, pursuing individual goals. The plague forces them together. They depend on each other. They must cooperate to survive. Suffering becomes collective rather than individual. This solidarity is one of the few positive aspects of the plague. It reveals that humans are connected, that individual existence is intertwined with others. The absurd is a shared condition. We face it together. Camus wrote The Plague in the aftermath of World War II. The novel can be read as an allegory for the Nazi occupation of France. The plague is fascism. The quarantine is occupation. The question is how to respond. Do you collaborate? Do you resist? Do you retreat into private life and hope to survive? Rieu and his companions represent the resistance. They fight knowing they may lose. They act according to their values even when those values seem futile. They maintain their humanity in inhuman circumstances. But the novel transcends its historical moment. The plague is any force that disrupts meaning and reveals the absurd. It could be war, dictatorship, natural disaster, personal tragedy, or simply the slow recognition that life has no inherent purpose. Whatever form the plague takes, the question remains the same. How will you respond? Will you deny reality? Will you despair? Will you seek distraction? Or will you engage? Will you fight? Will you help others, even knowing the ultimate futility? The plague in Oran eventually ends. After many months, the deaths decrease. The disease loses its virulence. The quarantine lifts. The citizens celebrate. They believe they have returned to normal life. But Rieu knows better. The plague bacillus never truly dies. It hibernates. It waits in furniture, in clothing, in the soil. One day it will awaken again. One day the rats will emerge, stagger, and die. One day the plague will return. This is Camus's vision of the human condition. The absurd is not a one-time crisis. It is permanent. We may forget it during periods of normalcy. We may pretend life has inherent meaning, but the absurd is always there, waiting, and when it arrives, we must choose how to respond. Retriem del Seductor, Rieu's choice, working without hope. Bernard Rieu is a doctor. This simple fact defines his response to the plague. He has skills. People are suffering. He uses his skills to help them. There is no complicated philosophical reasoning. There is no dramatic decision. There is only the obvious necessity of action. But as the plague continues, as the deaths multiply, as his efforts produce no lasting results, the simplicity of his choice reveals something profound. Rieu treats patients knowing most will die. He works 18-hour days knowing the plague will not end because of his work. He exposes himself to infection knowing he might die for nothing. He has no hope of victory. Hope requires believing that your efforts will produce desired results. Hope requires faith that things will improve. Hope requires some evidence that your actions matter in the larger scheme. Rhea has none of these. The plague kills arbitrarily. His treatments are mostly ineffective. The serum they develop works sometimes, but not reliably. People die despite his best efforts. People survive despite receiving no treatment. There is no pattern. Medicine provides some small comfort, but no real solution. A reasonable person might conclude that continuing is pointless. If you cannot win, why fight? If your efforts make no significant difference, why exhaust yourself? Why not preserve your energy, protect yourself, wait for the plague to run its course? Rue never considers these options, not because he is heroic or self-sacrificing in some dramatic sense, but because giving up is not in his nature. He is a doctor. Doctors treat sick people. The fact that the plague cannot be cured does not change this fundamental identity. Camus uses Rue to illustrate a crucial distinction. There is a difference between hope and commitment. Hope is directed toward outcomes. You hope for recovery, for success, for victory. Hope depends on believing these outcomes are possible. When they seem impossible, hope dies. Commitment is different. Commitment is about action regardless of outcome. You commit to doing what seems right or necessary according to your values and your role. The results are beyond your control. You do what you can do. That is all. Ryu is committed without being hopeful. He does not believe the plague will end because of his efforts. He does not believe he is saving Oran. He simply treats the patients in front of him, one after another, day after day, because that is what doctors do. This distinction matters because hope can be paralyzing. When you hope for specific outcomes, you become anxious about whether those outcomes will occur. You watch for signs of progress. You despair when progress is not visible. Your emotional state depends on circumstances beyond your control. But commitment frees you from this anxiety. You have decided what you will do. You do it. The outcomes will be whatever they will be. You cannot control them, so you do not worry about them. You focus on the action itself, on doing it well, on maintaining your standards. There is a conversation in the novel between Rue and Tarot, another volunteer. Tarot asks Rue why he fights the plague. Rue says, "It's a matter of common decency." Tarot asks what decency means. Rue replies, "In general, I can't say, but in my case, I know that it consists in doing my job." This is not a grand philosophical statement. It is almost banal, doing my job. But embedded in this simplicity is a complete ethical stance. You have a role. That role has responsibilities. You fulfill those responsibilities. This is decency. This is how you live with integrity in an absurd world. Rue is not saving the world. He is treating patients. He is not achieving ultimate meaning. He is doing his job. The plague will end or it will not. People will remember or they will forget. None of that matters to the immediate task. This patient, right now, needs help. This focus on the immediate and the concrete is central to Camus' ethics. Grandiose dreams of saving humanity often lead to fanaticism and violence. People commit atrocities in the name of utopian futures. They sacrifice real people for abstract ideals. But if you focus on what is in front of you, on the actual suffering of actual people, you remain grounded. You do not sacrifice anyone for a grand vision. You simply help where you can help. You reduce suffering where you can reduce it. You do your job. Ryu's wife is sick with tuberculosis. She left Oran for treatment in a sanatorium before the plague arrived. The quarantine traps them apart. Ryu does not know if she is alive or dead. He cannot contact her. He cannot go to her. This personal tragedy unfolds simultaneously with the public crisis. Yet Ryu does not allow his personal suffering to paralyze him. He does not become bitter. He does not use his own pain as an excuse to stop working. He continues treating patients. His private grief remains private. His public duty continues. This is not emotional repression. It is discipline. Ryu feels his pain, but he does not let it dominate his actions. He has work to do. Other people are suffering. His suffering does not excuse him from his responsibilities to them. Later, Ryu receives news that his wife has died. He feels the loss deeply, but he does not stop working. The plague continues. Patients continue to need treatment. His personal tragedy does not change the reality of the public crisis, he continues. Some readers find Ryu cold, emotionally distant. He narrates the plague with clinical detachment. He rarely expresses his feelings directly. He focuses on facts, on actions, on what happened, rather than on how he felt about what happened. But this detachment is not lack of feeling. It is a necessary distance. To do his job, Ryu cannot afford to feel every death completely. If he allowed himself to experience the full emotional weight of each loss, he would collapse. He must maintain some separation between himself and the suffering he witnesses. This is a survival strategy for anyone who works with suffering. Doctors, nurses, social workers, therapists all develop ways to care without being destroyed by caring. They learn to be present and engaged while also maintaining boundaries. They feel compassion without being overwhelmed by it. Ryu embodies this balance. He cares deeply. He treats each patient as an individual. He does everything he can to help, but he also accepts that he cannot save everyone. He cannot cure the plague. He can only do his part, and he does it without complaint, without drama, without hope of recognition or reward. There is a kind of heroism in this, but not the heroism of myth or legend. Ryu is not a warrior defeating enemies. He is not a genius discovering cures. He is a tired man doing difficult work because it needs to be done. He is ordinary in extraordinary circumstances, responding with simple decency. Camus wrote that the plague was his most anti-Christian book. He meant that it presented a world without divine providence, without cosmic justice, without hope of redemption. People suffer arbitrarily. Good people die. Evil people survive. There is no pattern, no plan, no meaning. In such a world, the Christian response, waiting for divine intervention or finding consolation in the promise of heaven, seems inadequate. What is needed is action, not faith. What is needed is people willing to fight the plague here and now, without guarantees of success and without hope of eternal reward. Ryu represents this secular morality. He does not believe in God. He does not believe suffering serves a divine purpose. He does not believe the plague is a punishment or a test. It is simply a disaster, a natural phenomenon, meaningless and terrible. But this lack of cosmic meaning does not paralyze him. If anything, it clarifies his responsibility. Since no God will intervene, humans must help each other. Since suffering serves no higher purpose, it should be reduced wherever possible. Since death is final, life becomes infinitely precious and must be protected. This is ethics without metaphysics. You do not need to believe in God or ultimate meaning to know that suffering is bad and should be reduced. You do not need cosmic purposes to recognize that you have responsibilities to other people. You simply need to pay attention to reality and respond accordingly. Ryu pays attention. He sees the suffering. He responds by working to reduce it. He does not worry about whether his work has ultimate significance. He does not need his actions to be cosmically important. It is enough that they help these specific people in this specific situation. Working without hope is liberating. Hope creates anxiety because it focuses you on outcomes you cannot control. You hope the plague will end. You hope your treatments will work. You hope you will not get infected. All these hopes create fear that they will not be realized. But if you abandon hope, if you simply commit to the work itself without attachment to specific outcomes, you become calm. You do what you do. Whatever happens, happens. You cannot control it. You can only control your effort, your intention, your commitment. This is not fatalism. Fatalism is passive acceptance. Ryu is intensely active. He fights the plague with every resource available. But he is not attached to winning the fight. He does his part. That is all he can do. That is all anyone can do. At the end of the novel, when the plague is ending, Ryu reflects on what has been learned. He concludes that there is more to admire than to despise in humans. People suffered, people died, but many also helped each other. Many performed small acts of kindness. Many did their jobs without complaint. This is not nothing. The absurd remains. The plague bacillus still exists. Suffering has not been eliminated. Death has not been conquered. But humans responded with decency and solidarity. They worked together. They helped each other. They maintained their humanity. This is Ryu's answer to the absurd. Not hope, not faith, not illusion, but simple, persistent decency. You see suffering. You have skills. You help. You do this every day without guarantee of success, without hope of ultimate meaning, without expectation of reward. You do it because you are here, because you can, because it is your job. And in doing it, you create meaning moment by moment, not cosmic meaning, but human meaning, the meaning that comes from connection and commitment and care. This is enough. It has to be enough, because it is all we have. The death of the innocent child, when all meaning fails. In the novel, there is a scene that Camus considered central. A child is dying of plague. His name is Jacques. He is the son of Judge Othon, a man whose professional life involved dispensing law and order. Now his child writhes in agony, his small body ravaged by disease. Dr. Ryu and his colleagues try everything. They administer the new serum they have been testing. The child suffers terribly. The convulsions last for hours. The adults watch helplessly. They can do nothing but witness. Father Panelou, a Jesuit priest, is present. He has been volunteering in the hospitals. He witnesses the child's agony. He watches the small body twist and break. He hears the screams. When the child finally dies, he is shaken to his core. After the death, Rue and Panelu walk outside together. Rue is angry. He says to the priest, "That child at least was innocent, and you know it." The statement is a challenge. Christianity teaches that suffering serves divine purposes. God permits suffering for reasons humans cannot fully understand but must trust are ultimately good. Suffering can be punishment for sin, or a test of faith, or a means of spiritual growth, or part of a larger plan that will be revealed. But what can justify the torture of an innocent child? What purpose does it serve? What lesson does it teach? What divine plan requires the prolonged agony of someone who has done nothing wrong, who has barely lived? Peneleu tries to answer. He says they must love what they cannot understand. They must have faith that God's purposes transcend human comprehension. The child's suffering is a mystery, but God is not cruel. There must be a reason even if we cannot see it. Rieu rejects this completely. He says, "I refuse to love a scheme of things in which children are put to torture." This is one of the most powerful statements in all of Camus's work. It is a refusal, not an argument, not a philosophical position, a moral refusal. Whatever cosmic order requires the torture of children, I reject it. If God permits this, then I reject God. If the universe is structured this way, then I reject the universe's authority. This is the limit point of meaning-making. You can construct elaborate philosophical or theological systems. You can argue that suffering serves purposes. You can claim that we must accept what we cannot understand. But when confronted with the concrete reality of a child dying in agony, all those abstractions collapse. The child's suffering means nothing. It serves no purpose. It teaches no lesson. It is simply terrible. And any system of meaning that cannot acknowledge this, that tries to justify or explain it away, reveals itself as obscene. Camus is not making an abstract argument about the problem of evil. He is showing us a specific scene. This child, this suffering, this death, and he is asking, what can you say about this? What meaning can you extract? What consolation can you offer? The honest answer is none. There is no meaning here. There is only suffering and death. The child did nothing to deserve this. The child's death accomplishes nothing. It is pure absurdity, pure meaninglessness, the universe's indifference made visceral and specific. Father Paneleu cannot accept this. To accept it would be to abandon his faith, so he constructs explanations. But Rieu sees through them, and so does the reader. The explanations are desperate attempts to preserve a worldview that the child's death has destroyed. Later in the novel, Paneleu gives another sermon. His first sermon, early in the plague, was confident. He proclaimed that the plague was divine punishment. The citizens of Oran had sinned. God was chastising them. They must repent. But after watching the child die, Paneleu cannot maintain this position. His second sermon is different. He speaks about faith in the face of incomprehensibility. He admits he does not understand God's purposes. He admits the suffering seems unjust. But he insists they must have faith anyway. They must love God even when God seems cruel. This is what Kierkegaard called the leap of faith. Reason fails, understanding fails, justice fails. But faith continues. You believe not because it makes sense, but despite making no sense. You submit to divine will even when that will appears monstrous. Camus sees this as intellectual and moral surrender. It is philosophical suicide, abandoning reason and conscience because they lead to uncomfortable conclusions. It is easier to leap into faith than to stand in the absurd and acknowledge that the child's death is meaningless. Shortly after his second sermon, Paneleu becomes sick. He displays plague symptoms, but also some differences. The doctors are not sure what is wrong with him. He refuses medical treatment. He seems to have decided to submit completely to God's will. If God wants him to die, he will die. He will not fight. He dies. His death is ambiguous. Did he have plague? Did he will himself to die? Did his faith sustain him or destroy him? The novel does not answer clearly, but his death follows from his inability to reconcile his faith with the child's suffering. Rieu, by contrast, continues working. He does not try to find meaning in the child's death. He does not construct explanations or theological justifications. He simply acknowledges that it was terrible, meaningless, and utterly wrong. And then he returns to treating patients, trying to prevent more children from dying. This is Camus' point. The universe contains suffering that cannot be justified or explained. Any honest confrontation with reality requires acknowledging this. You can respond by inventing meanings, by leaping into faith, by constructing philosophical systems. But all of these are escapes from the brute fact. Innocent children suffer and die for no reason. The alternative is to stop trying to justify suffering and start trying to reduce it. You cannot make the child's death meaningful, but you can work to prevent other children from dying. You cannot reconcile the suffering with a benevolent universe, but you can fight against suffering wherever you encounter it. This is the ethics of revolt. You see that the universe is not just. You do not accept this. You rebel against it. You work to create justice even though the universe does not support your efforts. You help the vulnerable even though helping them does not serve any cosmic purpose. The child's death is the test case. If your philosophy or religion can accommodate this, if it can explain it away or find meaning in it, then your philosophy or religion is divorced from reality. Because there is no meaning here. There is only horror. Camus knew this scene would be controversial. He knew religious readers would object, but he considered it necessary. The absurd is not an abstract concept, it is the reality of meaningless suffering. And the most clear instance of meaningless suffering is the agony of the innocent. You cannot build an honest philosophy without confronting this reality. You cannot talk about meaning and purpose and divine providence without addressing what those concepts mean in the face of a child dying in agony. Most philosophical and religious systems fail this test. They try to preserve their worldviews by incorporating suffering into them. They claim suffering serves purposes. They tell stories about how pain leads to growth, or how God tests those he loves, or how karma explains misfortune. But these stories are insults to the suffering. They minimize it. They try to make it serve some function. They suggest that the child's agony is acceptable if it serves a larger plan. This is obscene. Camus' position is simpler and harsher. The child's suffering is not acceptable. It is not justified. It does not serve any purpose. It is wrong. The universe is wrong. Reality is wrong. And we must rebel against this wrongness even though we cannot change it fundamentally. We cannot prevent all suffering. We cannot cure the plague of existence. But we can reduce suffering where we encounter it. We can treat this patient, comfort this person, prevent this death. We can work without hope of ultimate success, but with commitment to immediate decency. The child's death clarifies everything. It strips away all comfortable illusions. It forces you to choose. Will you preserve your worldview by explaining away the suffering? Or will you abandon the worldview and simply acknowledge the truth? Ryu chooses truth. The child's death is meaningless. The plague is meaningless. Suffering is meaningless. There is no divine plan, no cosmic justice, no ultimate purpose. There is only what is: pain, death, the indifference of reality. Given this truth, what do? You could despair, you could embrace nihilism, you could say that if nothing means anything, then nothing matters, and you might as well do nothing. Or you could do what Ryu does. You could work, you could help, you could fight against suffering even though suffering cannot be eliminated. You could create small islands of decency in an indecent universe. You could treat patients knowing they might die anyway. You could rebel. The child's death is not a problem to be solved. It is a reality to be faced. Camus shows us that reality in its full horror. He does not soften it. He does not provide consolation. He simply shows us what the absurd looks like when it becomes concrete and specific. And he asks, now what? Now that you have seen this, now that you cannot unsee it, how will you live? What will you do? There is only one answer Camus considers acceptable. You will continue, you will work, you will help. Not because it will save the world, not because it will defeat the absurd, but because it is what you can do. It is your response. It is your revolt. The child is dead. Nothing can change that. Nothing can make it meaningful. Nothing can justify it. But there are other children still alive, still vulnerable. You can work to protect them. This does not solve the problem, but it is something. It is all you have, and so you do it. Solidarity in suffering. We are not alone. The plague creates a strange equality in Oran. Before the epidemic, the city had its hierarchies: wealthy and poor, important and insignificant, powerful and powerless. People lived separate lives in separate social spheres. They had different concerns, different futures, different possibilities. The plague eliminates these distinctions. Disease does not respect social status. It strikes the rich and poor alike. It kills the powerful and powerless with equal indifference. Everyone is vulnerable, everyone is afraid, everyone faces the same threat. This shared vulnerability creates a new kind of connection. The citizens of Oran are all in this together. They are trapped in the same city, facing the same danger, living under the same restrictions. Their individual fates are intertwined. What affects one potentially affects all. Camus uses the word solidarity to describe this connection. Solidarity is not the same as friendship or affection. You do not need to like someone to feel solidarity with them. Solidarity is recognition of shared condition, shared struggle, shared humanity. Before the plague, the citizens of Oran were isolated in their individual lives. They pursued private goals. They competed with each other. They were strangers living in proximity but not genuinely connected. The plague forces connection. Suddenly, everyone needs everyone else. The functioning of the city depends on cooperation. Food must be distributed, bodies must be buried, hospitals must be staffed, quarantine must be enforced. None of this can be done by individuals acting alone. Volunteer teams form. People who would never have spoken before work side by side. A civil servant and a laborer dig graves together. A businessman and a criminal carry stretchers together. The plague strips away social masks and reveals the basic equality of human beings facing death. This solidarity is one of the few positive aspects of the plague. It proves that humans are not fundamentally selfish or isolated. When circumstances demand it, people can work together, help each other, sacrifice for the common good. Taro, one of the central characters, organizes sanitation teams. These are volunteers who clean the city, remove bodies, disinfect buildings, all tasks that expose them to infection. He does not appeal to grand principles, he simply asks people to help. Many respond. Why do they volunteer? Not for reward. There is no payment, not for recognition. The work is thankless, not for hope. Most believe the plague cannot be defeated. They volunteer because it needs to be done, because others need help. Because in a collective crisis, you do your part. This is solidarity in action. Not a philosophical concept, but a practical response. You see the situation. You have some ability to help. You help. You do this not because of abstract principles, but because you are part of a community, and communities survive through mutual aid. Camus contrasts this solidarity with individualistic responses to the plague. Some people try to escape Oran through bribery or smuggling. Some hoard supplies. Some take advantage of the crisis to profit. Some retreat into private comfort and ignore the public suffering. These responses are understandable. Self-preservation is natural, but they are also inadequate. In a collective crisis, purely individual responses fail. No one can survive alone. Everyone depends on social structures, on others doing their jobs, on the functioning of community. The plague makes this dependence visible. In normal times, we pretend to be independent. We imagine we are self-sufficient. We believe we succeed or fail based on individual merit. But the plague reveals the truth. We are interconnected, interdependent, fundamentally social. Your safety depends on others maintaining quarantine. Your food depends on others working in supply chains. Your health depends on others staffing hospitals. You cannot opt out. You cannot protect yourself in isolation. You are part of a collective, whether you acknowledge it or not. This recognition of interdependence is central to Camus's ethics. The absurd is a shared condition. Every conscious being faces meaninglessness and mortality. We are all Sisyphus, all pushing rocks up mountains. This shared condition creates a bond. Camus writes in The Rebel, "I rebel, therefore we exist." This is a crucial formulation. Rebellion against the absurd is not individual, it creates community. When I recognize the absurd and choose to live anyway, I recognize that others face the same condition. My rebellion implies their rebellion. My struggle implies their struggle. This is why solidarity matters. It is not sentiment. It is recognition of shared reality. We are all in this absurd existence together. We all suffer. We all die. We are connected through this common fate. And because we are connected, we have responsibilities to each other. Not cosmic responsibilities imposed from outside, but natural responsibilities that arise from our shared condition. If we are all facing the plague, literal or metaphorical, then helping each other is not charity. It is recognition of solidarity. The novel shows many small acts of solidarity. A neighbor shares food. A stranger offers comfort. A volunteer risks infection to help. None of these acts are dramatic. None solve the crisis. But each recognizes the connection between people, the fact that we are not alone even in absurdity. Roux embodies this solidarity in his work. He treats patients not as cases but as fellow beings. He sees their suffering and responds to it. He does not distance himself through professional detachment. He remains connected even while maintaining the boundaries necessary to function. Tarot, too, seeks solidarity. He tells Roux about his past, about how he came to reject violence and authority. He speaks about wanting to be a saint without God, someone who acts morally without religious motivation. He wants to be on the side of the victims, always with those who suffer. This is what solidarity means: choosing to stand with the vulnerable, with those who suffer, with those who struggle, not because they deserve it or because it will accomplish something ultimate, but because they are human and you share this condition. The quarantine amplifies this solidarity. The citizens are literally trapped together. They cannot escape to individual safety. They must either work together or perish together. This forced togetherness creates genuine community. Camus suggests that this community, forged in crisis, reveals something true about human existence that normalcy obscures. We are always interconnected. We always depend on each other. We are always part of collective existence. But in normal times, we forget this. We retreat into individual concerns. The plague strips away the illusion of separateness. It forces us to recognize our connections, and in that recognition, a kind of meaning emerges. Not cosmic meaning, but human meaning. The meaning that comes from solidarity, from working together, from caring for each other. This meaning is fragile. When the plague ends, when life returns to normal, the solidarity may dissolve. People may return to their separate lives, their individual pursuits, their competition and isolation. The lesson may be forgotten. But for those who experienced it, who lived through the crisis, the memory remains. They know what humans are capable of. They know that solidarity is possible. They know that in the face of absurdity, people can choose connection over isolation, cooperation over selfishness, decency over despair. This knowledge does not solve the problem of the absurd. The universe remains indifferent. Life remains meaningless ultimately. Death remains inevitable. But humans do not have to face these realities alone. They can face them together, supporting each other, helping each other, creating small pockets of warmth and connection in a cold universe. This is not nothing. It does not defeat the absurd, but it makes the absurd bearable. And perhaps that is the most we can hope for. Not victory, but the strength to endure. Not isolation, but solidarity in struggle. The plague will return. Camus is clear about this. The bacillus waits. One day, there will be another crisis, another confrontation with the absurd. When it comes, the question will be, how will we respond? Will we retreat into individual self-preservation, or will we remember the solidarity that helped us survive before? The answer is not certain, but the possibility exists. Humans can choose solidarity. They can choose to help each other. They can choose to stand together against the absurd, and in that choice, they create something that did not exist before: community, connection, shared meaning in a meaningless world. This is the triumph, small but real, that emerges from the plague. Not the defeat of disease, but the discovery of solidarity. Not the elimination of suffering, but the willingness to suffer together, to help each other bear what cannot be avoided. We are not alone. This is the message. Even in absurdity, even in meaninglessness, even in death, we have each other. And that connection, that solidarity, that recognition of shared humanity is worth preserving, worth fighting for, worth living for. It does not make everything better, but it makes things bearable. And in an absurd universe, bearable is enough. I rebel, therefore we exist, the birth of ethics. In 1951, Camus published The Rebel, a long philosophical essay examining rebellion and revolution. The opening pages present an idea that would become central to his later philosophy. Rebellion creates ethics. The argument works like this. You are suffering under oppression or injustice or absurdity. You reach a limit. You say, this far and no further. You refuse to accept what is being done to you. You rebel. In that moment of rebellion, something important happens. You assert that something matters. You assert that there are limits that should not be crossed. You assert a value, human dignity, justice, freedom, something worth defending. This assertion is strange in an absurd universe. If nothing has inherent meaning, if the universe is indifferent, on what basis do you claim that something matters? On what authority do you declare that limits exist? You have no cosmic authority. No God endorses your rebellion. No ultimate truth validates your assertion. You are simply a conscious being saying, this is wrong, I refuse it. But in making this assertion, you reveal something about human existence. You reveal that humans are value-creating creatures. We cannot help it. Even in recognizing the absurd, even in seeing that the universe provides no values, we create values anyway. We must. It is part of being conscious. Camus' formula is, I rebel, therefore we exist. Not, I think, therefore I am, as Descartes claimed, but I rebel, therefore we exist. The shift from I to we is crucial. When you rebel, you are not asserting merely your own dignity or your own rights. You are asserting human dignity, human rights. Your rebellion implies that something is true for all humans. If it is wrong to treat you this way, it is wrong to treat anyone this way. Rebellion thus creates the first ethical principle, recognition of shared humanity. When you rebel against your own degradation, you simultaneously rebel against all degradation. Your individual resistance becomes universal resistance. This is how ethics emerges from the absurd, not from divine command, not from rational principles, not from utilitarian calculation, but from the immediate experience of revolt. You are pushed too far. You say no. In that no, you assert a yes. Yes to human dignity. Yes to the value of life. Yes to limits that should not be crossed. Camus distinguishes between metaphysical rebellion and historical rebellion. Metaphysical rebellion is revolt against the human condition itself. It says, I rebel against death, against suffering, against the absurd structure of existence. This is the rebellion of consciousness against its situation. Historical rebellion is revolt against specific injustices, tyranny, slavery, oppression, exploitation. This is rebellion against human evil rather than cosmic indifference. Both forms of rebellion reveal values. Both assert that something matters. But historical rebellion has practical consequences. It motivates action against real wrongs. It creates movements for liberation and justice. The problem, Camus argues, is that historical rebellions often betray their origins. They begin with genuine revolt against injustice, but they become corrupted. They pursue absolute solutions. They decide that the end justifies any means. They kill in the name of justice. They become what they opposed. This happened with the French Revolution. It began as rebellion against tyranny. It asserted the rights of man, liberty, equality, fraternity. But it ended in terror, with revolutionaries sending thousands to the guillotine. The rebellion devoured itself. This happened with the Russian Revolution. It began as rebellion against oppression. It promised a workers' paradise, a just society, the end of exploitation. But it created totalitarianism, gulags, mass murder. The rebellion became worse than what it rebelled against. Why does this happen? Camus argues it is because rebellions forget their origins. They forget that rebellion asserts human dignity. They start treating humans as means to ends, as expendable resources in pursuit of abstract goals. They sacrifice real people for imaginary futures. A true rebellion, Camus insists, must remain faithful to its origin. It must continue to assert human dignity. It must refuse to kill in the name of justice. It must set limits on itself. It must say, I rebel against oppression, but I will not become an oppressor. I assert human value, so I will not destroy humans. This creates a tension. How do you fight injustice without becoming unjust? How do you oppose evil without using evil means? How do you rebel effectively while maintaining your principles? Camus does not have a complete answer, but he insists on the question. He insists that rebellion must be self-limiting, that it must maintain its connection to the value of human life, that it must not pursue abstract ideals at the expense of concrete persons. This position made him unpopular with revolutionaries. The left-wing intellectuals of his time, many of them communists or communist sympathizers, believed that history required violence, that you could not make an omelet without breaking eggs, that the future utopia justified present brutality. Camus rejected this completely. No future justifies present murder. No ideal justifies sacrificing real people. If your revolution requires killing innocents, your revolution has already failed morally. This is not pacifism. Camus was not opposed to all violence. He fought in the resistance during World War II. He understood that some situations require force. But he distinguished between violence in self-defense or defense of others and violence in pursuit of abstract goals. You can fight against an oppressor who threatens lives, but you cannot kill in the name of creating a perfect society, because perfect societies do not exist. And pursuing them through violence creates only more violence, more oppression, more suffering. The Rebel was published at the height of the Cold War. The Communist Party had significant influence among French intellectuals. Many excused Soviet brutality as necessary for historical progress. They believed the Communist Revolution, despite its costs, was creating a better world. Camus challenged this. He examined the logic of revolution and found it inevitably led to tyranny. Revolutionary movements claimed to speak for all humanity, for the oppressed, for history itself. But this claim justified any action. If you are implementing historical necessity, then opposition is not just wrong, but criminal. Dissent becomes treason. Murder becomes necessary. The book created a scandal. Camus was accused of betraying the left, of aiding fascism, of abandoning the working class. His friendship with Jean-Paul Sartre ended over political disagreements. Camus found himself isolated from the intellectual establishment, but he maintained his position. Rebellion must be measured. It must recognize limits. It must value human life above abstract principles. Otherwise, it becomes nihilism, destroying everything in pursuit of nothing. This brings us back to the relationship between rebellion and ethics. Ethics begins in the moment of revolt. You say, "This is wrong. I refuse it." In that refusal, you assert a value, and that value implies a principle. If this is wrong when done to me, it is wrong when done to anyone. From this simple beginning, an entire ethics can be built. Not an ethics based on duty or divine command or utilitarian calculation, but an ethics based on solidarity. We are all conscious beings facing the absurd. We all suffer. We all die. We are connected through this shared condition. And because we are connected, we have responsibilities to each other. We must not increase each other's suffering. We must not treat each other as means to ends. We must recognize each other's dignity, their consciousness, their absolute value as beings who exist and feel and struggle. This is not a perfect ethics. It does not provide clear rules for every situation. It does not resolve all moral dilemmas. But it provides a foundation. Human life is precious. Human dignity is real. And these values emerge from rebellion itself. You do not need God to tell you that murder is wrong. You need only your own rebellion against being murdered. You do not need utilitarian calculations to know that suffering should be reduced. You need only your own experience of suffering and your refusal to accept it. Ethics is not something imposed from outside. It is something that emerges from within, from consciousness, from the immediate experience of being human in an absurd world. And this ethics, grounded in rebellion and solidarity, is enough. It may be all we have, but it is real. I rebel, therefore we exist. This is the birth of ethics from the absurd, not perfect, not absolute, but human, real, grounded in the actual experience of living and suffering and refusing to accept suffering as the final word. We are all rebels, or we should be. We all face conditions we should refuse. And in refusing them, we create not just ourselves, but a human community bound by shared revolt against everything that degrades us. This is our dignity, not given by gods, not guaranteed by the universe, but created by us through rebellion, through refusal, through the simple assertion, this far and no further. I am human, we are human, and that means something. Retrium dulls he the limits of rebellion, when revolution becomes terror. Rebellion begins with a noble impulse. Someone refuses to accept injustice. They say no to oppression, to degradation, to the abuse of human dignity. This refusal is pure, it asserts value, it creates ethics, it is the foundation of human freedom. But rebellion does not stay pure. It grows, it organizes, it develops ideology, it attracts followers, it becomes a movement. And movements require goals, strategies, justifications. The simple refusal becomes complicated. The rebel says, this oppression must end. But how? Through persuasion? Oppressors rarely relinquish power voluntarily. Through reform, systems protect themselves. The conclusion seems inevitable. Through force, through revolution. Revolution promises total transformation. It promises to eliminate injustice at its root. It promises a new world, a just society, the end of oppression. These promises are intoxicating. They justify present sacrifice for future redemption. But here rebellion begins to betray itself. The rebel who refused to accept degradation now degrades others in pursuit of the ideal. The rebel who asserted human dignity now treats humans as obstacles or tools. The rebellion becomes what it opposed. Camus traces this pattern through history. The French Revolution began with Enlightenment ideals: liberty, equality, fraternity, the Declaration of the Rights of Man, universal principles of human dignity. But within years, the revolutionaries were executing thousands. The guillotine worked constantly. Terror became official policy. Why? Because the revolution encountered resistance. Not everyone agreed with its principles. Not everyone wanted the changes it proposed. Some defended the old order. Some simply wanted to be left alone. The revolution decided these people were enemies, threats to the new world being born. And if they threatened the revolution, they threatened justice itself. Because the revolution represented justice, progress, history's direction. Opposition to the revolution was not merely disagreement, it was crime against humanity. It had to be eliminated. This logic, once established, expands infinitely. Anyone can be declared an enemy of the revolution. Anyone can be suspected of insufficient enthusiasm. The revolution begins to consume its own. Revolutionaries who made the revolution are executed by later revolutionaries. Robespierre, who sent thousands to death, is himself guillotined. The pattern repeated in the Russian Revolution. It began with rebellion against genuine oppression. The czarist system was brutal. Workers and peasants suffered terribly. The revolutionaries promised liberation. They promised bread, peace, land. They promised power to the workers. But once in power, the Bolsheviks became more oppressive than the czars. They eliminated opposition parties. They crushed workers' movements that did not obey party directives. They created secret police, labor camps, show trials. They killed millions in the name of building socialism. Lenin and later Stalin justified this through ideology. They claimed to understand historical laws. History was moving toward communism. This was scientific fact, not opinion. Anyone opposing this movement opposed history itself. They were reactionaries, enemies, saboteurs. They had to be destroyed. The revolution claimed absolute knowledge. It claimed to speak for all humanity. It claimed its goals justified any means, and so it killed, tortured, enslaved, all in the name of future justice. Camus saw clearly what many of his contemporaries refused to see. The Soviet Union was not creating a workers' paradise. It was creating a totalitarian nightmare. And this was not an accident or a betrayal of true communism. It was the inevitable result of revolutionary logic. When you believe you possess absolute truth, when you believe you are implementing historical necessity, when you believe the end justifies the means, then there are no limits to what you can do. Murder becomes necessary. Oppression becomes liberation. Lies become truth. This is nihilism disguised as idealism. It is the destruction of human values in the name of abstract principles. It sacrifices real people for imaginary futures. It treats human beings as raw material for constructing utopia. Camus contrasts this unlimited rebellion with rebellion that recognizes limits. True rebellion, faithful to its origin, continues to assert human dignity. It refuses to kill in the name of justice because killing violates the very value rebellion asserts. This creates a difficult position. If you will not use any means necessary, how can you defeat entrenched power? If you maintain ethical limits, how can you compete with those who have none? The question haunts anyone trying to fight injustice while remaining just. Camus acknowledges this difficulty. He does not claim there are easy answers, but he insists on the principle. Rebellion must not become what it rebels against. The moment you start treating humans as expendable, you have abandoned the human values that justified rebellion in the first place. He points to examples of measured rebellion. The French resistance during World War II fought against Nazi occupation but maintained limits. They attacked military targets. They avoided unnecessary civilian casualties. They did not torture prisoners, even though the Nazis tortured captured resistance fighters. They fought brutality without becoming brutal. This was possible because the resistance had limited goals. They wanted to expel the occupiers, not to create a perfect society. They wanted to restore freedom, not to implement an ideology. Their goals were concrete, achievable, and did not require total transformation of human nature or society. But revolutionary movements have unlimited goals. They want not just to change this policy or remove that ruler, but to transform everything. New economic systems, new social structures, new types of human being. Nothing less than total transformation will satisfy them. And total transformation requires total power. You must control everything to change everything. You must eliminate all opposition because any opposition threatens the transformation. You must use any means because the goal is absolute. This is where rebellion becomes terror. The beautiful vision of a just society justifies horrific actions in the present. The perfect future makes the imperfect present expendable. The abstract ideal destroys concrete persons. Camus's response is to reject utopian thinking entirely. There is no perfect society. There is no end to history. There is no ultimate solution to human problems. We are absurd beings in an absurd world. We can improve conditions. We can reduce suffering. We can increase freedom. But we cannot eliminate the absurd condition itself. Revolutionary movements promise elimination of the absurd through social transformation. They promise that once capitalism is overthrown or the old order is destroyed, human alienation will end. People will be free, equal, fulfilled. History will reach its conclusion. But this is fantasy. Human beings will still die. Life will still lack inherent meaning. The absurd will remain. Changing social structures cannot eliminate existential realities. The revolution cannot deliver what it promises. And in pursuing impossible goals, it creates unnecessary suffering. It kills real people for imaginary futures. It oppresses present generations for the supposed benefit of future generations. It sacrifices everything actual for something hypothetical. Camus advocates what he calls Mediterranean thinking, a philosophy of limits and moderation. This is not weakness or compromise, it is wisdom. It recognizes that humans are finite, that our knowledge is limited, that we cannot transform everything, that we must work within constraints. Mediterranean thinking accepts the absurd. It does not try to overcome or eliminate it through revolution. It tries to live with it through measured action. It seeks not perfection but improvement. It values not abstract ideals but concrete persons. This philosophy frustrated revolutionaries. They saw it as defeatism, as acceptance of injustice, as bourgeois complacency. They believed Camus was abandoning the oppressed, refusing to fight for their liberation. But Camus argued the opposite. Unlimited rebellion abandons the oppressed by treating them as material for historical experiments. It uses them as means to ideological ends. It claims to speak for them while silencing their actual voices. True solidarity with the oppressed means respecting their humanity, their dignity, their right not to be sacrificed for someone else's vision of justice. It means fighting for concrete improvements in their actual lives rather than for abstract transformations that may never come. This is difficult philosophy. It offers no utopian visions. It promises no ultimate victory. It asks you to work for modest improvements knowing the absurd remains. It asks you to maintain ethical limits knowing this makes your struggle harder. But it is honest philosophy. It does not lie about what is possible. It does not promise what cannot be delivered. It does not justify present evil for future good. It stays grounded in reality, in actual human lives, in the recognition that persons are not expendable. Rebellion must recognize its limits or become what it opposes. This is the central lesson of The Rebel. The book traced centuries of revolutionary movements showing how each began with genuine revolt and ended in tyranny. The pattern was consistent. The corruption was predictable. The alternative is rebellion that stays faithful to human dignity, rebellion that refuses to kill innocents, rebellion that pursues concrete justice rather than abstract utopia, rebellion that recognizes it cannot eliminate the absurd but can reduce unnecessary suffering. This rebellion is less dramatic. It does not promise total transformation. It does not claim to represent historical necessity. It simply says, this injustice here, this suffering now, I will oppose it. I will work to end it. But I will not become an oppressor in fighting oppression. This is enough. It must be enough. Because the alternative, unlimited rebellion, creates mountains of corpses in pursuit of heaven on earth. And heaven on earth never arrives. Only the corpses remain. The rebel who recognizes limits remains human. The rebel who recognizes no limits becomes monster. This is the choice. There is no third option. You either maintain your connection to human values or you sacrifice them for abstract goals. Camus chose limits. He chose human over abstract. He chose present persons over future ideals. He chose modest improvement over total transformation. And in making these choices, he preserved what rebellion exists to defend: human dignity, human life, human freedom. Not perfect, not absolute, not ultimate, but real. And in an absurd universe, real is all we have. The artist's rebellion, creating against the void. There is a passage in the myth of Sisyphus where Camus discusses the actor. The actor is an absurd hero, he says, because the actor lives many lives while knowing all of them are temporary and false. The actor becomes kings, lovers, heroes, villains. But when the performance ends, these identities dissolve. The actor returns to ordinary existence, aware that all roles are constructions, all meanings are created, all performances are temporary. Yet the actor continues performing, not despite this knowledge, but with it. The actor embraces the multiplicity of experience, the creation of meaning through performance, the intensity of living many lives in one lifetime. This is a model for the artist more broadly. The artist is engaged in rebellion against the absurd through creation. The universe is silent, meaningless, indifferent. The artist responds by creating meaning, creating beauty, creating order from chaos. This is not self-deception. The artist knows the meaning they create is not cosmic or eternal. The painting will fade, the book will be forgotten, the music will cease. All creation is temporary. But the artist creates anyway. This is revolt. Why create if everything ends? Why write books that will be forgotten? Why paint pictures that will decay? Why compose music that will cease? If nothing lasts, what is the point? The point is the creating itself. The act of making something that did not exist before, the ordering of chaos into form, the expression of consciousness, the assertion that beauty matters, that meaning can be created, that humans are not merely passive victims of the absurd but active creators. Art is rebellion because it refuses to accept the given. Reality as it exists is not enough. The artist transforms it, reimagines it, creates new possibilities. The world is not beautiful enough, so the artist creates beauty. The world is not meaningful enough, so the artist creates meaning. But the rebellion must be honest. The artist cannot pretend to discover eternal truths or reveal cosmic meanings. The art does not connect us to God or disclose ultimate reality. It is human creation, nothing more but nothing less. Camus distinguishes between art that accepts the absurd and art that escapes from it. Some art tries to provide consolation, to suggest that deeper meanings exist, to promise redemption or transcendence. This art is not honest. It is wishful thinking disguised as creation. Honest art faces the absurd directly. It does not promise meanings beyond itself. It exists as creation, as expression, as rebellion, but not as revelation. It says, "This is what I made. This is how I responded to existence. This is my act of creation against the void." The novel, the painting, the sculpture, the symphony, each is a rock pushed up a mountain. The artist creates knowing the creation is not ultimate, but the creating fills the artist's life. It provides purpose, not discovered but invented. It gives meaning to days, to years, to a lifetime. And while the creation lasts, before it fades or is forgotten, it can affect others. The reader encounters the book. Something passes between writer and reader. An experience, an idea, a feeling. The book exists between them, connecting them across space and time. This connection is temporary and limited. The book will be misunderstood. Future readers will interpret it differently. Eventually, it will be forgotten. But for now, in this moment, it creates a bridge between consciousnesses. The artist's rebellion becomes shared. Camus wrote books knowing they would not last forever. He created characters, told stories, developed ideas. He did this in a universe he believed was absurd and indifferent. Why? Because creating was his response. It was how he engaged with existence. It was his form of rebellion. The artist lives intensely. Each work requires complete commitment. You cannot create half-heartedly. You must give yourself fully to the work. You must care about it as if it matters absolutely, even while knowing it matters only relatively. This double consciousness is essential. You must care enough to create well, but you must not deceive yourself about ultimate significance. The work is important to you, valuable to you, meaningful to you, but it is not cosmically important or eternally valuable or objectively meaningful. This is the artist's version of Sisyphus's happiness. Sisyphus is happy because he is fully engaged with his task, without illusions about its ultimate purpose. The artist is similarly engaged. The work fills consciousness. The creating absorbs attention. In that absorption, there is satisfaction. But art is not merely personal satisfaction. It has social dimensions. Art communicates. It passes from artist to audience. It affects how people see, think, feel. It shapes culture, influences ideas, changes consciousness. This gives art a kind of significance beyond personal expression. The artist creates meaning not just for themselves, but potentially for others. The book, the painting, the film enters the world and affects it in small ways. It becomes part of human culture, part of the shared symbols and stories through which we understand existence. Yet this significance is not ultimate. Cultures change, meanings shift. What seems profound in one era seems quaint in another. The artist cannot control how the work will be received or what it will mean to future audiences. The work escapes the artist and lives its own life for a time. Camus describes the artist as someone who recreates reality rather than escaping from it. Escapist art tries to take us away from reality into fantasy or consolation, but honest art takes reality as material and transforms it, showing us what can be made from what is. The artist looks at the absurd and says, "Given this, what can I create? Given meaninglessness, what meanings can I construct? Given chaos, what order can I impose? Given death, what life can I express?" These questions drive creation. The artist does not deny the absurd. The artist uses it. The limitations become material. The temporariness becomes urgency. The meaninglessness becomes freedom. You can create anything because nothing is predetermined. This is why Camus valued artists who faced reality directly. Writers like Dostoevsky who explored human suffering without flinching. Painters like Van Gogh who expressed intensity of perception. Composers who captured the complexity of human emotion. All were rebels, creating against the void. But Camus warned against art becoming propaganda. When art serves ideology, when it tries to convey messages rather than create experiences, it loses its rebellion. It becomes a tool, a means to an end. It sacrifices aesthetic truth for political usefulness. True art has no message. It is not trying to convince you of anything. It is simply showing you something, offering you an experience, creating a world for you to enter. What you take from it is up to you. The art does not dictate interpretation. This freedom of art mirrors the freedom of absurd existence. Just as the universe does not tell you how to live, the artwork does not tell you what to think. It presents possibilities, it opens perspectives, it enriches experience, but it does not command. The artist's rebellion is thus deeply connected to human freedom. By creating without predetermined purpose, the artist demonstrates that humans can create their own purposes. By making beauty in an indifferent universe, the artist shows that beauty is possible even without cosmic justification. Every artwork is evidence that humans can respond to the absurd creatively rather than only destructively. We can make things, we can beautify existence, we can enrich consciousness. These acts do not solve the problem of the absurd, but they show that the absurd is not the only reality. Human creation is also real. And this matters. It does not matter absolutely or eternally, but it matters humanly, temporally, here and now. The painting hanging on the wall, the book sitting on the shelf, the music playing in the room, each is a small victory against meaninglessness. Not a permanent victory, but a real one. The artist ages, the creative powers fade. Eventually, death comes. The artist's rebellion ends. The works remain for a time, then they too fade. Nothing lasts. But while it lasted, creation happened. Meaning was made, beauty existed, consciousness expressed itself. This is enough. It has to be enough. The artist is not trying to defeat death or eliminate the absurd or achieve immortality. The artist is simply creating because they can, because they must, because it is their response to being alive and conscious in this strange, indifferent universe. And in creating, they join a tradition. Every artist builds on previous artists. Every work responds to previous works. There is a human conversation happening across centuries, carried on through art. You are not alone in your rebellion. Others have created before you. Others will create after you. This is the artist's form of solidarity, not working together directly, but contributing to a shared human project, the creation of meaning and beauty in an absurd world. Each artist adds something to this project. Each work is a contribution, however small. When you encounter a great work of art, you are encountering another consciousness's rebellion. You are seeing how someone else responded to existence. You are experiencing their creation, their meaning-making, their revolt against the silence. This encounter can inspire your own rebellion. You see that creation is possible. You see that others have faced the absurd and made something beautiful from it. You realize you can do the same, in your own way, with your own materials. The artist's rebellion thus propagates. It spreads from creator to audience. It inspires others to create. It builds a culture of creation, a human world of meaning superimposed on the meaningless universe. This human world is fragile. It requires constant renewal. Each generation must create anew. Each person must make their own response. The meanings are not inherited automatically. They must be recreated, reimagined, made fresh. But this is not burden, it is opportunity. You are not bound by the past. You can create something new. You can add your voice to the human chorus. You can make your rebellion, and perhaps for a time your creation will matter to someone. Perhaps it will affect them, inspire them, connect with them. Perhaps it will help them in their own struggle with the absurd. This is all any artist can hope for. Not immortality, not ultimate significance, not cosmic meaning, just human connection, human communication, human creation. Just the rock pushed up the mountain, the work made, the rebellion expressed. This is the artist's path. Creating against the void, making meaning in meaninglessness, expressing consciousness, rebelling through beauty, not forever, but for now, and now is all we have. The Fall, Clemens's Confession of Hypocrisy. In 1956, Camus published The Fall, his final completed novel. It is a strange, unsettling book, very different from his earlier works. The narrator is Jean-Baptiste Clemens, who calls himself a judge penitent. He tells his story to a silent listener in an Amsterdam bar over several days. Clemens was once a successful Parisian lawyer. He specialized in noble causes, defending widows, orphans, the powerless. He refused payment from those who could not afford it. He helped blind people cross streets. He gave money to beggars. He was admired, respected, considered a good man. And he knew he was good. He took pleasure in his virtue. When he helped someone, he felt satisfaction. When others praised him, he felt vindicated. He performed good deeds not just for those he helped, but for himself, for the image of himself as virtuous. This is hypocrisy, but subtle hypocrisy. He genuinely helped people. The widow won her case. The blind person crossed safely. The beggar got money. The actions were real, but the motivation was tainted. He did good in order to think well of himself, to maintain his self-image as a good person. One night, walking home across a bridge in Paris, Clemens passed a young woman leaning on the railing, looking at the river below. He walked past her. Then he heard a splash and a cry. The woman had jumped into the river. Clemens stopped. He should turn back. He should call for help. He should do something. But he did nothing. He stood frozen. He listened to the woman crying out in the water. He heard her cries fade, then silence. He walked home. He told no one. He read newspapers for days, looking for reports of a body found in the Seine. Nothing appeared. The incident seemed to vanish as if it never happened. But it happened. Clemens knew it happened, and he knew he had done nothing. This moment destroys him. His self-image as a good man shatters. He realizes his virtue was performance. When genuine self-sacrifice was required, when no one was watching to praise him, when helping would cost him something, he did nothing. He let someone die because saving them was inconvenient. He begins to see his entire life differently. All his good deeds were theater. He helped people when it was easy, when it reflected well on him, when it cost him nothing real. He never truly sacrificed. He never truly gave. He performed goodness while maintaining comfortable distance from genuine commitment. This recognition spreads. He begins to suspect everyone of similar hypocrisy. The charitable man who advertises his charity, the faithful wife who imagines affairs, the honest businessman who cheats in small ways, the devoted patriot who would flee if war came. Everyone performs virtue. Everyone maintains an image. No one is genuinely good. Clemens's response is to abandon pretense entirely. He leaves Paris. He goes to Amsterdam, city of gray skies and canals, city of concentric circles like rings of hell. He frequents a sailor's bar in the red light district. He drinks. He tells his story to strangers. He calls himself a judge penitent, a penitent because he confesses his sins, a judge because in confessing, he implicates others. He describes his hypocrisy in such detail that his listener, whoever they are, recognizes themselves. You too are a hypocrite. You too perform virtue while avoiding genuine sacrifice. You too are fallen. This is Clemens's revenge. He cannot escape his guilt. The woman's cry echoes in his memory. He carries this knowledge always. When it mattered, when someone's life depended on him, he did nothing. He cannot undo this. He cannot forgive himself. So he implicates others. If everyone is hypocritical, if everyone is fallen, then he is not uniquely guilty. His crime becomes universal. His fall becomes human condition. This does not absolve him, but it distributes the guilt. The Fall is Camus's darkest work. It offers no solutions, no redemption, no clear moral. It simply presents one man's confession and leaves the reader to sit with it. Are we all like Clemens? Do we all perform virtue while avoiding real sacrifice? When the moment comes, when genuine cost is required, would we act or would we, like him, walk away? The book can be read as Camus' examination of his own conscience. He had positioned himself as a moral authority. He wrote about rebellion, solidarity, fighting injustice. But was he truly living according to these principles? Or was he too performing, maintaining an image while compromising in practice? During the Algerian War, Camus struggled with divided loyalties. Algeria was his homeland. He loved it. But Algeria was fighting for independence from France. Violence escalated on both sides. Camus opposed French colonialism, but also opposed the violence of the independence movement. He called for civil truce, for dialogue, for solutions that protected all innocents. This position satisfied no one. The French right attacked him as a traitor. The Algerian independence movement rejected his moderation. His former leftist allies accused him of moral cowardice, of refusing to support liberation unequivocally. Clemens may be Camus' reflection on this impossible situation. When genuine commitment was required, when he had to choose sides fully, he found himself unable. He advocated principles but could not apply them cleanly to messy reality. He performed morality in his writing but struggled to embody it in political action. But The Fall is not just personal confession. It is examination of moral performance more broadly. We all present ourselves as better than we are. We all construct narratives of our virtue. We all ignore our hypocrisies, our failures, our moments of cowardice. Clemens forces us to examine these failures. He describes his with such unflinching honesty that we cannot help but recognize our own. The book becomes a mirror. We see ourselves in Clemens, and the reflection is disturbing. Yet there is something almost redemptive in the honesty. Clemens has abandoned pretense. He no longer claims to be good. He acknowledges his fall completely. In this acknowledgement, there is a kind of integrity. He is no longer performing. He is simply confessing, describing what he is without justification or excuse. This suggests a possibility. Perhaps genuine morality begins not with performance of virtue, but with acknowledgement of failure. Perhaps honesty about our hypocrisy is more valuable than pretense of purity. Perhaps we can only become decent by first admitting our indecency. The novel ends ambiguously. Clemens imagines a second chance. If the moment came again, if he heard another cry from another bridge, would he act this time? He does not know. He hopes so. But he is not certain. The moment has not come. Perhaps it never will. This uncertainty is crucial. Clemens cannot know if he would act differently because the test has not been repeated. He can only wait, carrying his guilt, wondering if he would fail again. He has not redeemed himself. He has only confessed. Redemption, if it comes, must come through action. But the action has not yet been possible. We are left with confession without redemption, truth-telling without transformation. Clemens knows what he is. He admits what he is, but he has not changed what he is. The knowledge has not led to virtue, only to clearer vice. Is this progress? Is honesty about hypocrisy better than unconscious hypocrisy? Camus does not answer. He simply presents the situation and leaves us to judge. And in judging Clemens, we judge ourselves. The Fall is uncomfortable because it is recognizable. We have all walked past someone in need. We have all avoided inconvenient sacrifice. We have all performed virtue while protecting comfort. We are all, in our ways, fallen, and we are all, like Camus, uncertain whether we would act differently if given another chance. We would like to think we would, we tell ourselves we would, but Camus thought so too before the moment came, and when it came, he did nothing. This is the book's power and its terror. It strips away comfortable moral certainty. It reveals the gap between our self-image and our actions. It shows that knowing what is right does not mean doing what is right. The woman cries, the moment passes, we do nothing, and then we must live with that knowledge. We must carry it forward. We must wonder if we will fail again. We must confess, if only to ourselves, what we are, not what we pretend to be, not what we want to be, but what we actually are in moments of truth. This is Camus's lesson and Camus' warning. Be careful of your virtue. Examine your motivations. Question your goodness. Do not trust your self-image. When the moment comes, when genuine cost is required, you may surprise yourself. You may discover you are not who you thought you were. And then what? Then you must decide. Will you continue performing? Will you retreat into comfortable hypocrisy? Or will you acknowledge your fall and attempt, however uncertainly, to rise? The book does not tell us, it only asks. And in asking, it disturbs. Which is perhaps the most honest thing art can do. Retriumdal's love without eternity, authentic connection. In an absurd universe where death is final and nothing lasts, what does it mean to love? What is the point of connection when separation is inevitable? Why open yourself to another when loss is guaranteed? These questions haunt human relationships. We love knowing we will die. We connect knowing connection is temporary. We build intimacy knowing it will end. The absurd penetrates even our most profound experiences. Some respond by avoiding connection entirely. If loss is inevitable, why expose yourself to it? Better to remain detached, to protect yourself, to avoid the pain that comes from caring about something you will lose. This is a kind of emotional suicide, a retreat from life's vulnerability. Others respond by creating illusions. They tell themselves love transcends death. They believe souls reunite in afterlife. They imagine eternal bonds that survive physical separation. They construct narratives where love conquers death, where connection persists beyond mortality. Camus rejects both responses. Avoiding love is surrendering to the absurd. Creating illusions is escaping from it. The authentic response is to love fully while acknowledging its temporariness, to connect deeply while knowing connection will end, to care intensely precisely because time is limited. This is love without eternity, love without guarantees, love without cosmic justification, love that exists simply because two conscious beings choose to share their brief existence. In The Stranger, Meursault's relationship with Marie illustrates one possibility. Marie asks if he loves her. He says probably not. She asks if he wants to marry her. He says he will if she wants. She asks if he would marry someone else if they asked. He says yes. This radical honesty destroys conventional romance. Marie is hurt, but also intrigued. Meursault refuses to perform the expected emotions or speak the required words. He will not say he loves her if he does not feel love as others describe it. He will not promise eternal devotion he cannot guarantee. Yet he does spend time with her. He enjoys her company. He shares physical intimacy with her. He is present with her in moments. He simply will not construct narratives about what this means or where it will lead. Is this love? By conventional standards, no. Meursault does not sacrifice for Marie. He does not prioritize her above himself. He does not speak about destiny or soulmates or eternal connection. He simply is with her when he is with her. But perhaps this is a more honest form of connection. No pretense, no performance, no promises that cannot be kept. Just two people sharing time together, enjoying each other's presence without illusions about what this means cosmically or eternally. The problem is that this honesty makes genuine intimacy difficult. Intimacy requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires trust. Trust requires some belief that the other person cares, that the connection matters to them, that they will not abandon you arbitrarily. Meursault offers no such assurances. He is present but uncommitted, available but detached, with her but not truly bound to her. This is connection without depth, presence without intimacy. Camus seems to recognize this limitation. In The Plague, Dr. Roux's relationship with his wife offers a different model. His wife is sick. She left Oran before the plague for treatment. The quarantine separates them. Roux does not know if she is alive. He cannot contact her. He cannot go to her. Yet she matters to him. He thinks of her. He worries about her. He feels her absence. When news finally comes of her death, he grieves. The connection was real. The love was genuine. The separation and loss cause actual pain. This is love that acknowledges mortality but embraces connection anyway. Rue knows his wife will die eventually, as all people die. The plague makes this fact immediate and concrete. But knowing this does not diminish his love. If anything, it intensifies it. The temporariness of their time together makes it precious. The vulnerability of human life makes protecting life urgent. The inevitability of death makes the time before death infinitely valuable. Because they will not have forever, the time they have matters absolutely. This is the paradox of absurd love. Because nothing lasts, everything matters now. Because death is final, life is precious. Because loss is certain, connection is brave. You love knowing you will lose. You connect knowing it will end. And you do it anyway. Why? Not because love conquers death. It does not. Not because souls reunite. They do not. But because you are alive now, and they are alive now, and sharing existence with another conscious being enriches your brief time. Love becomes an act of rebellion. In an indifferent universe, you choose to care about someone. You make them matter to you. You create meaning through connection. The universe provides no justification for this. You do it anyway. This rebellion is vulnerable. Love exposes you. It gives someone else power to hurt you. It creates dependencies. It makes you care about things beyond your control. Loving someone means giving them the ability to destroy you through their loss. Yet humans continue to love. They continue to form bonds, create families, build friendships, fall into passion. They expose themselves to loss repeatedly. They suffer when connection breaks, and then they seek connection again. This persistence suggests something about human nature. We are not built for isolation. We need connection even when connection brings pain. We need love even when love guarantees loss. We are fundamentally relational beings, and denying this fundamental aspect damages us more than accepting vulnerability. Camus writes about love in the context of the Mediterranean, the sun, the physical body. His philosophy is not ascetic. It does not deny the body or flee from sensual pleasure. Love includes physical connection, sexual joy, the pleasure of bodies together. This physicality matters. It grounds love in immediate experience rather than abstract ideals. You do not love an immortal soul. You love this body, this voice, this laugh, this presence. The love is concrete, specific, embodied, and because it is embodied, it is mortal. But this mortality does not make the love less real. The warmth of skin, the sound of breathing beside you in sleep, the particular way someone moves or speaks or looks at you, these are real experiences. They do not need to last forever to be valuable. They are valuable now. Western philosophy often treats the body as inferior to the mind or soul. Physical pleasure is lower than intellectual or spiritual satisfaction. Sexual love is less noble than platonic love. The flesh is weak, temporary, ultimately insignificant. Camus rejects this hierarchy. The body is not inferior. Physical experience is not less real than mental experience. Sexual love is not less valuable than intellectual connection. The flesh is all we have. It is not a prison, but the site of existence itself. Love, then, is not escape from the body into some higher realm. It is the body's joy in another body. It is physical presence, touch, sensation. It is also conversation, shared perception, mutual understanding. But it is always embodied, always specific, always here. This means love changes as bodies change. Youth's passion differs from age's companionship. The body's vitality affects connection's expression. Love is not static or eternal, but evolving, tied to the physical beings who experience it. And when the body dies, the love ends. There is no soul continuing to love. There is no afterlife reunion. There is only memory in the survivor's mind, memory that will also end when the survivor dies. Love is as mortal as the lovers. This could be seen as tragic. All love stories end in separation. Either the lovers part in life or death parts them. No love escapes this ending. Every connection contains its dissolution. But Camus suggests we see it differently. The ending does not negate the experience. The fact that love ends does not mean it was meaningless. While it lasted, it was real. It enriched existence. It made life more bearable and more intense. It created meaning in the time shared. The poet who writes knowing the poem will be forgotten still experiences the joy of writing. The parent who raises a child knowing the child will die still finds meaning in parenting. The lover who loves knowing love will end still experiences love fully. This is living without appeal applied to relationships. You do not appeal to eternity to justify your love. You do not need cosmic guarantees. You love because you choose to, because you are alive, because this person is here with you now, and sharing existence with them matters to you. This makes every moment of connection precious. You cannot take time together for granted. You cannot assume there will always be more time. You must be present now, attentive now, loving now, because now is all you have. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. This urgency intensifies relationship. It removes the comfort of assuming permanence. It makes you aware that this conversation might be the last, this embrace might be the final one, this shared laugh might not be repeated. Not in morbid anxiety, but in heightened appreciation. The alternative is to live as if you have infinite time, to postpone connection, to delay intimacy, to assume you can always say what you mean, do what you want, be who you are later, to waste the present in anticipation of an endless future. But the future is not endless. Time is limited. The person you love will die, or you will die, and the connection will end. Knowing this, living with this knowledge, you can choose to fully inhabit the time you have together. This is not always romantic love. Camus writes about friendship too, about camaraderie, about solidarity among people facing shared struggles. These connections are also temporary and meaningful. They also create value in an absurd world. The volunteers in the plague form bonds. They work together. They depend on each other. They share the intensity of crisis. These relationships matter. They are not eternal but real. They provide connection in isolation, meaning in chaos, solidarity in struggle. When the plague ends, these relationships may dissolve. People return to separate lives. The urgency that bonded them fades, but the experience remains. For a time, they were not alone. They worked together. They helped each other. The connection, while it lasted, was genuine. This is enough. Connection does not need to last forever to be valuable. Relationship does not need cosmic significance to be meaningful. Love does not need eternity to be love. Two people find each other. They share time. They create connection. They experience joy, intimacy, understanding. Then circumstances change. Bodies age. Death comes. The connection ends. But while it existed, it was real. It mattered. It enriched existence. This is love without eternity. Love without guarantees. Love that acknowledges its mortality and embraces connection anyway. Love that is brave enough to care even knowing loss is inevitable. Love that creates meaning moment by moment in an absurd universe. It asks nothing from the universe. It creates its own justification. Two conscious beings choosing to care about each other, choosing to share their brief existence, choosing to make each other's lives richer and more bearable. This is enough. This is everything. This is love. The present moment, quantity over quality. Most philosophical traditions emphasize quality of life over quantity. Better to live one day as a lion than 1,000 as a sheep. Better to live virtuously briefly than viciously long. Better to have deep, meaningful experiences than many superficial ones. Quality, these traditions insist, is what matters. Camus questions this, not because he opposes quality, but because the distinction can become an excuse for not fully living. People defer life. They wait for ideal conditions. They save intensity for special moments. They live tentatively, in anticipation of someday really living. In the myth of Sisyphus, Camus describes the absurd man as someone who prefers quantity, not superficial experiences, but many experiences, not shallow living, but varied living. The absurd man multiplies encounters with existence rather than waiting for perfect encounters. This is partly about presence. Quality thinking often involves comparison and evaluation. Is this experience meaningful enough? Is this relationship deep enough? Is this achievement significant enough? You are constantly measuring, judging, deciding if what you are experiencing meets some standard. But measuring takes you out of immediate experience. You are not fully present with what is happening because you are evaluating whether it is important enough. You watch yourself living rather than simply living. Quantity thinking rejects this evaluation. You are alive. You are experiencing something. You are present. That is enough. You do not need to determine if this moment is sufficiently meaningful. You simply inhabit it fully. This does not mean passive acceptance of whatever happens. It means active engagement with whatever you are doing. If you are eating, you eat fully, attending to taste and texture and sensation. If you are working, you work fully, engaged with the task. If you are with someone, you are fully present with them. Each moment becomes complete in itself. You are not living this moment for some future result. You are not treating now as means to later. You are simply here, now, experiencing what there is to experience. Camus uses the image of Don Juan, the legendary seducer. Don Juan loves many women. He does not stay with anyone. He moves from connection to connection, experiencing variety rather than depth. Conventional morality condemns this. Don Juan is shallow, uncommitted, irresponsible. But Camus sees something different. Don Juan is fully present with each woman. He does not treat them as means to some other end. He is genuinely there, genuinely attentive, genuinely engaged. Each connection is complete in itself. He does not promise eternity because he is focused on now. This is not a recommendation for infidelity. It is an illustration of a way of being. Don Juan multiplies his experiences. He does not limit himself to one relationship, waiting for it to provide everything. He encounters existence through many relationships, each enriching his understanding and experience. The point is not promiscuity, but presence. Do not limit your engagement with life because you are waiting for ideal circumstances. Do not defer experience because this person, this place, this moment is not perfect. Be here, now, fully, in whatever circumstances exist. This applies beyond romance. Work, travel, conversation, learning, creating, all can be approached with this multiplying spirit. Do many things. Try various paths. Encounter existence broadly rather than narrowly. Do not specialize so much that you miss the variety of what life offers. Modern life pushes specialization. Choose a career. Develop expertise. Focus narrowly. Go deep rather than broad. This has practical value. Expertise requires concentrated effort. But it can also narrow existence. You become defined by your specialization. Other possibilities close off. The absurd man resists this narrowing. Yes, work is necessary, but work is not everything. You have time that is not work. What do you do with it? Do you extend your specialization, working more? Or do you pursue variety, experiencing different aspects of existence? Camus suggests variety, not superficial dabbling, but genuine engagement with multiple domains. Read widely, try different activities, encounter different people and places. Live many lives within your one life. This is possible. Most people have 30,000 days, give or take. Each day offers possibilities. Even within constraints of work and responsibility, there are choices. What you read, who you speak with, what you notice, where you walk, these small choices multiply into very different lives. Two people with the same job and family structure can live radically different lives based on how they inhabit their free moments. One reads broadly, explores ideas, seeks new experiences, cultivates many interests. The other settles into routine, repeats familiar patterns, narrows rather than expands. The first person lives more, not in length but in breadth. They pack more experience into their days. They encounter existence more fully. They multiply their engagement with reality. This is what Camus means by quantity, not mindless accumulation, but conscious multiplication of experience. You have limited time. Use it to encounter as much of existence as possible. Do not wait for perfect moments. Make moments meaningful through full engagement. This requires energy. Full presence demands attention. You cannot coast through experiences. You must show up, pay attention, genuinely engage. This is tiring. It would be easier to retreat into routine, to live partially, to save energy for some imagined future. But the future may not come. Death can arrive at any moment. The plague strikes without warning. The car accident happens. The disease develops. One day you are alive and the next you are not. There is no guaranteed time to live the life you are postponing. So live now, fully, with intensity. Multiply your engagement. Do not wait. Do not defer. Do not save yourself for some better moment. This is the moment. This is all you have. Inhabit it completely. People often experience this urgency after near-death experiences or diagnoses of serious illness. Suddenly aware of mortality, they change how they live. They stop deferring. They do what they have been postponing. They tell people what they have not said. They experience what they have avoided. They live more intensely because they know time is limited. But time is always limited. We simply forget this. We act as if we have infinite time. We postpone as if there will always be later. But later is not guaranteed. Recognizing this means living with the urgency of mortality even without imminent threat. This is not anxiety. It is not morbid preoccupation with death. It is simply realistic acknowledgement that time is finite and should not be wasted. You should do what you want to do, experience what you want to experience, become who you want to become now, because now is all you have. Camus describes the absurd man as someone who exhausts what is given. You are given this life, these circumstances, this time. You exhaust it. You extract every possible experience. You do not leave possibilities unexplored. You do not reach the end wondering what you missed. This is living without appeal applied to time. You do not appeal to future life or afterlife to justify postponing. You do not wait for better circumstances. You work with what you have, when you have it, as fully as possible. And in doing this, you discover something. The present moment is always enough. When you are fully present, when you are not comparing this moment to ideal moments or measuring it against standards of significance, When you simply experience what is happening, you find satisfaction. Not because the moment is perfect. Moments are never perfect. There are always problems, limitations, discomforts. But when you are fully present, you are too busy living to worry about whether what you are living is good enough. This is quantity consciousness. More moments of presence, more experiences fully inhabited, more encounters with reality, more engagement with existence. Not saving yourself but spending yourself. Not conserving but expressing. Not waiting but living. And at the end, when death comes, you will have lived. Not perfectly, not ideally, but actually, you will have experienced your brief time conscious. You will have multiplied your engagement with reality. You will have exhausted what was given. This is all anyone can do. This is enough. Return to Tipasa, reconciliation with the world. In 1952, Camus returned to Tipasa, ruins of an ancient Roman city on the Algerian coast. He had visited as a young man, before the war, before fame, before the struggles that defined his middle years. Now in his 40s, he returned. He wrote an essay about this return. The essay is personal, reflective, different in tone from his philosophical works. It is about memory, loss, reconciliation, finding his way back to something essential he had temporarily lost. Tipasa is ruins by the sea, columns and stones from Roman occupation, Mediterranean sun, blue water, rocky coast, simple physical beauty. For the young Camus, this place represented a kind of pagan joy, a sensual connection to the world, a happiness rooted in the body and nature rather than in ideas or meanings. But when he returned, access was restricted. Fences prevented him from reaching the ruins as he had before. He had to view them from distance. The place was the same, but he could not inhabit it as he once did. Something had been lost. This physical restriction mirrors an inner change. Camus had spent years immersed in intellectual and political struggles. He fought against injustice. He wrote about the absurd. He engaged in philosophical battles. He opposed totalitarianism. These were necessary, important struggles, but they had cost him something. They had taken him away from the immediate, sensual connection to existence he knew as a young man. He had become trapped in ideas, in arguments, in abstractions. He had lost touch with the simple joy of physical existence. Tipasa represented what he had lost: direct engagement with the world, unmediated by philosophy or politics, the sun on skin, the smell of the sea, the visual beauty of light on stone. These immediate experiences need no intellectual justification. They are their own meaning. The essay describes his attempt to reclaim this immediacy, not to abandon philosophy, but to balance it with physical presence, not to reject intellectual life, but to ground it in bodily life, not to flee from ideas, but to remember that ideas serve life, not the other way around. There is a line in the essay: "In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer." This has become one of Camus' most famous statements. It captures something essential about his mature philosophy. Winter represents hardship, struggle, suffering, the darkness of history, the brutality of politics, the horror of war, the recognition of the absurd. These are winter experiences. They are cold, harsh, difficult. But within himself, despite these winter experiences, Camus found summer. Summer is warmth, light, sensual joy. It is the Mediterranean. It is the body. It is connection to the physical world. It is happiness that exists prior to and independent of intellectual justifications. This invincible summer is not naive optimism. Camus had seen too much horror for that. It is not denial of darkness. It is recognition that darkness is not the whole truth. Yes, the world is absurd. Yes, humans are cruel. Yes, suffering exists. But also, the sun is warm. The water is beautiful. The body feels pleasure. These two are real. The danger in focusing exclusively on the absurd, on injustice, on suffering, is that you begin to see only darkness. The intellectual recognition of meaninglessness can poison immediate experience. You cannot enjoy simple pleasures because you know they are temporary and ultimately meaningless. This is a kind of intellectual prison. You trap yourself in abstractions. You lose the ability to simply be, to experience without analyzing, to feel without questioning the feeling's cosmic significance. Tipasa offered Camus an escape from this prison, or rather a reminder that escape is possible. You can think deeply about the absurd and still feel the sun's warmth. You can recognize meaninglessness and still enjoy the taste of food. You can understand that nothing lasts and still love the present moment. This is reconciliation with the world, not acceptance of injustice, not surrender to the absurd, but reconciliation with existence itself. Acknowledgement that despite everything, being alive is not entirely terrible. There are moments of joy, There are experiences of beauty. There is pleasure in physical existence. This reconciliation is mature philosophy. Young philosophy is often oppositional. It fights against the world as it is. It demands that reality conform to ideals. It stays angry at existence for not being what it should be. Mature philosophy makes peace with reality while still working to improve it. It accepts what cannot be changed, death and absurdity, and the universe's indifference, while refusing to accept what can be changed, human cruelty and injustice and unnecessary suffering. At Tipasa, Camus rediscovered this balance. He had been fighting for so long, struggling against injustice and absurdity, that he had forgotten how to simply exist. He had forgotten that life is not only struggle. It is also sunlight and seawater and the smell of earth. The essay is valedictory in tone. Camus was not old, only in his early 40s, but he seemed to sense his time was limited. He died 8 years after this return to Tipasa, at 51, suddenly, in a car accident. This essay reads like someone taking stock, reflecting on what matters, trying to integrate the different aspects of his life and thought. He concludes that both are necessary. You need the intellectual life, the engagement with ideas, the fight against injustice, but you also need the physical life, the sensual connection to the world, the simple joys of existence. One without the other is incomplete. Pure sensualism, pure enjoyment of physical pleasure without consciousness of larger issues, is irresponsible. It ignores suffering. It withdraws from collective life. It is private happiness at the expense of solidarity. But pure intellectualism, pure engagement with ideas and struggles without connection to physical joy, is exhausting and ultimately sterile. It becomes grim. It loses touch with what makes life worth living. It fights for humanity while forgetting to be human. The balance is difficult. How do you remain engaged with serious issues without being consumed by them? How do you fight injustice without losing your capacity for joy? How do you acknowledge the absurd without letting it poison immediate experience? Camus does not provide a formula. Each person must find their own balance, but he offers Tipasa as an image, ruins by the sea, ancient stones under Mediterranean sun, beauty in decay, joy despite impermanence. The Romans built these structures, they fell, the empire ended, the people died, but the stones remain, and they are beautiful. Life was lived here, meaning was created here, then it ended. But the ending does not negate what was. This is the lesson of Tipasa. Everything ends, empires fall, lives cease, nothing lasts. But while things exist, while life is being lived, there is beauty and joy and meaning. The temporariness does not eliminate these. It gives them urgency and poignancy. You stand in the ruins. The past is gone. Your own future is uncertain. But right now, the sun is warm and the sea is blue and you are alive. Can you feel this? Can you experience it without your knowledge of mortality and meaninglessness destroying the experience? Camus says yes. This is what he rediscovered at Tipasa, the invincible summer. The capacity to feel joy despite knowing joy is temporary. The ability to love the world despite understanding the world is absurd. This capacity is not automatic. You can lose it. Years of struggle and suffering and intellectual labor can erode it. You can become so focused on darkness that you cannot see light. You can become so conscious of meaninglessness that you cannot experience meaning. But you can also reclaim it. You can return to Tipasa, literally or metaphorically. You can reconnect with immediate physical existence. You can remember that your body is not just a vehicle for your mind, but the site of experience itself. You can rediscover simple joys. This is not regression to naivety. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot become innocent again. But you can achieve something better than innocence. Experience joy, conscious pleasure, reconciliation that includes rather than excludes awareness of darkness. The invincible summer is not denial of winter. It is the discovery that summer exists even in winter, that warmth persists even in cold, that joy is possible even in suffering, not constant joy, not perfect happiness, but moments of genuine, embodied pleasure in existence. And these moments matter. They make life bearable. They provide the energy needed for continued struggle. They remind you why existence is worth defending, why human life is precious, why fighting against injustice matters. If you saw only darkness, you might give up. But when you also see light, when you experience joy, when you feel the invincible summer, you have reasons to continue. Not ultimate reasons, not cosmic justifications, but human reasons, rooted in actual experience. This is Camus' mature wisdom. Fight for justice, resist oppression, acknowledge the absurd, but also feel the sun, swim in the sea, laugh with friends, love the physical world, experience the invincible summer that makes winter bearable. Balance mind and body, balance struggle and joy, Balance consciousness of darkness with experience of light. Do not let either dominate completely. Hold both in tension. This is how you live fully in an absurd world. Return to tapasa whenever necessary. Return to whatever grounds you in immediate physical existence. Remember what you are defending when you fight for human dignity. Not abstract principles, but concrete persons who feel and suffer and also sometimes experience joy. This is reconciliation. Not with injustice, not with the absurd condition, but with existence itself. With the strange fact of being alive, conscious, embodied, here, now, capable of both suffering and joy. It is enough. It has to be enough. It is all we have. Retriumduls he, the invincible summer, hope within despair. The phrase invincible summer suggests something paradoxical. How can summer be invincible when seasons inevitably change? How can warmth persist when winter always comes? How can light survive darkness? But Camus is not speaking meteorologically. He is speaking psychologically, existentially. The invincible summer is not external weather, but internal state. It is a capacity that cannot be destroyed by circumstances. It is resilience rooted not in hope, but in something deeper. Hope requires believing things will improve. Hope requires faith in progress, in eventual solutions, in better futures. But Camus has already rejected hope. He sees it as escape from present reality, as deferral of engagement, as wishful thinking that weakens rather than strengthens. The invincible summer is not hope. It is something that persists even when hope fails. Even when circumstances do not improve, even when the future looks dark, even when rational assessment suggests despair is the only reasonable response. What is this something? It is the capacity to experience joy independent of circumstances. It is finding warmth not in external conditions but in internal resources. It is maintaining connection to life itself even when life becomes difficult. This capacity is not automatic. People lose it. Prolonged suffering, trauma, depression, exhaustion can erode it. The invincible summer can seem to disappear. Winter can seem permanent. Cold can penetrate so deep that warmth becomes unimaginable. Camus knew this personally. He battled tuberculosis throughout his life. He experienced poverty as a child. He lived through war. He faced political persecution and intellectual isolation. He knew darkness intimately. He was not writing from comfortable distance, but from within struggle. Yet he maintained his capacity for joy. He loved the physical world. He enjoyed friendship. He took pleasure in writing. He experienced beauty. The darkness did not eliminate these experiences. It coexisted with them. This coexistence is crucial. The invincible summer does not replace winter. It exists within winter. You do not wait for circumstances to improve to experience joy. You find joy within difficult circumstances. Not constant joy, not overwhelming happiness, but moments, glimpses, brief experiences of warmth. These moments sustain you. They provide the energy to continue. They remind you that existence is not entirely suffering. They give you reasons to persist that are not rational or hopeful, but experiential. Someone in deep depression might find the invincible summer in simple pleasures that momentarily break through the numbness. The taste of coffee, the warmth of bath water, the feeling of sunlight on skin. These tiny experiences do not cure depression, but they provide momentary relief, small openings in the darkness. Someone facing terminal illness might find it in presence with loved ones, in small comforts, in acceptance of what is rather than despair over what will not be. Not denial of death, not pretense that everything is fine, but capacity to experience connection and care even while dying. Someone living under oppression might find it in acts of resistance, in solidarity with others, in maintaining dignity despite degradation. Not because resistance will necessarily succeed, but because resisting affirms your humanity, creates meaning, generates warmth even in cold political climates. The invincible summer is not passivity. It is not acceptance of injustice or suffering. It is maintaining your capacity to experience life fully, even while fighting against what makes life difficult. It is refusing to let circumstances destroy your inner resources. This requires discipline. It requires conscious attention to small joys that are easy to overlook when focused on large problems. It requires noticing beauty even in ugly circumstances. It requires protecting your capacity for positive experience even when negativity seems more appropriate. Some might call this self-care, though that term carries implications of indulgence that Camus would reject. The invincible summer is not treating yourself well as a break from treating the world's problems seriously. It is recognizing that you cannot address the world's problems effectively if you have destroyed your own capacity to experience life as worth living. Burnt-out activists know this. They fight for justice so intensely that they exhaust themselves. They focus so completely on what is wrong that they lose touch with what makes life worthwhile. They become martyrs to causes, sacrificing themselves supposedly for others. But this sacrifice often becomes counterproductive. Exhausted, depleted people cannot sustain effective action. Maintaining the invincible summer means preserving your resources. It means balancing engagement with rest, struggle with pleasure, work with play. It means remembering that you are not just a tool for accomplishing goals, but a living being deserving of joy. This is not selfishness. It is sustainability. Long-term resistance to injustice requires people who can sustain their energy and enthusiasm. This requires them to maintain connection to what makes life meaningful. If fighting injustice makes your own life miserable, you will eventually stop fighting or become ineffective. The invincible summer is also connected to gratitude. Not gratitude toward someone or something that gave you life, not religious gratitude toward God, but simple recognition that existence is a gift in the sense of something you did not earn and do not deserve but have anyway. You are alive. You are conscious. You can experience things. You can feel warmth and taste food and hear music and see color. These capacities are extraordinary when you think about them. Most of the universe is dead, unconscious, incapable of experience. You are among the tiny fraction that is aware. This recognition does not solve any problems. It does not eliminate suffering or injustice, but it provides perspective. However difficult your circumstances, you have this: consciousness, experience, the capacity to feel and perceive. And consciousness includes not only suffering, but also pleasure. The same nervous system that allows you to feel pain allows you to feel warmth. The same mind that recognizes absurdity can also experience beauty. The same existence that includes death also includes life. The invincible summer is choosing to notice both, not denying the pain or pretending everything is fine, but also not denying the pleasure or pretending everything is terrible. Holding both in awareness, acknowledging the full complexity of existence. This is mature consciousness. Immature consciousness sees only one side, either naive optimism that ignores darkness or nihilistic pessimism that ignores light. Mature consciousness sees both and chooses to engage with both. You acknowledge suffering exists. You work to reduce it. You fight against injustice. You recognize the absurd, but you also feel the sun when it shines. You enjoy food when you eat. You laugh when something is funny. You experience beauty when you encounter it. These are not contradictions. They are the full range of human experience. Life includes both. Pretending otherwise, focusing exclusively on either positive or negative, is a form of dishonesty. The invincible summer is honest. It admits winter exists. It does not pretend summer is eternal or that cold is not real, but it also refuses to pretend summer is impossible or that warmth is illusion. Both are real. Both are part of existence. And in the midst of winter, when cold seems overwhelming and permanent, remembering the invincible summer means remembering that warmth is possible. Not guaranteed, not coming soon necessarily, but possible. Within you, available if you pay attention, if you remain open, if you protect your capacity to experience it. This is not positive thinking. It is not affirmations or visualizations or pretending to feel what you do not feel. It is noticing what you actually feel in moments when you feel it. Not manufacturing false emotions, but acknowledging real ones when they occur. The taste of coffee really is pleasant. The warmth of sun really does feel good. Laughter really is enjoyable. These experiences happen even in difficult times. The invincible summer is not missing them, not being so consumed by darkness that you fail to notice light when it appears. And these small experiences accumulate. They provide counterbalance to suffering. They remind you that existence is not uniformly terrible. They give you reasons to continue that are not abstract or philosophical, but immediate and experiential. You continue living not because you have hope that things will improve. You continue because right now, in this moment, something is worth experiencing. This coffee tastes good. This person's company is pleasant. This view is beautiful. This is enough right now to justify continuing. And then another moment comes. Maybe it is difficult. Maybe you suffer. But then another small pleasure appears. A friendly word, a comfortable temperature, a moment of rest. Each moment that contains something worth experiencing justifies continuing to the next moment. This is living without hope, but not without joy. Hope looks to the future. Joy exists in the present. You do not need to believe the future will be better to enjoy the present. You simply need to be present to notice what the present contains. The invincible summer is this capacity to be present, to experience what is actually happening rather than being lost in thoughts about how terrible everything is or will be. To feel what you are actually feeling rather than the feelings you think you should feel given your circumstances. And you discover something. The present moment is rarely as terrible as your thoughts about the past or future. Yes, life includes suffering, But most moments are not pure suffering. Most moments are mixed, containing difficulty, but also containing small comforts, small pleasures, small beauties. Noticing these does not eliminate the difficulty, but it makes the difficulty more bearable. It provides small reprieves. It reminds you that existence is not only struggle, but also experience, not only pain, but also sensation, not only darkness, but also light. This is the invincible summer, not hope that cannot be destroyed because it is grounded in nothing, but joy that cannot be destroyed because it is grounded in actual experience, in the body's capacity to feel pleasure, in consciousness's capacity to notice beauty, in human connection's capacity to provide warmth. Winter comes, it always comes. Suffering is real. Injustice exists, death is inevitable, but within all of this, within the midst of winter itself, there is summer. Invincible because it is not dependent on circumstances. Present because it is rooted in the fundamental nature of conscious existence. Feel it, protect it, return to it when you lose it. It is your resource for enduring. It is what makes endurance worthwhile. It is hope's replacement, more reliable because more immediate, more honest because less dependent on uncertain futures. The invincible summer is within you. It has always been there. It will always be there. Even in the coldest winters, even in the darkest nights, even when everything seems hopeless and meaningless and terrible. Feel the sun, remember warmth, experience joy, not despite the darkness but within it. This is how you survive. This is how you live fully. This is your rebellion against the cold. The sound of silence, final peace with absurdity. We began this journey in darkness, with closed eyes and the invitation to settle into the philosophy of Albert Camus. We have traveled through absurdity, rebellion, solidarity, and reconciliation. Now we arrive at a kind of ending, though endings in Camus' philosophy are always provisional, always temporary, always subject to beginning again. The sound of silence. What does this mean? Silence is not sound, yet Camus often returned to images of silence. The universe is silence in response to our questions, the silence of death, the silence of acceptance. This silence is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is the cessation of the constant internal noise, the questioning and analyzing and worrying that fills most minds most of the time. It is peace with what is, without needing to explain or justify or transform it. Throughout his work, Camus grappled with noise. The noise of ideology shouting certainties, the noise of hope promising futures, the noise of philosophy constructing systems, the noise of politics demanding positions. He spent his life in this noise, contributing to it, fighting within it, but underneath the noise was always silence. The silence of the Mediterranean Sea, the silence of ancient ruins, the silence of existence itself, prior to all our narratives about it. This silence called to him. He returned to it repeatedly. It grounded him when the noise became overwhelming. Final peace with absurdity does not mean solving the absurd. The absurd cannot be solved. The universe remains indifferent. Life remains without inherent meaning. Death remains inevitable. Nothing about the fundamental condition changes. But your relationship to the condition can change. You can stop fighting against what cannot be changed. You can stop demanding that reality conform to your desires. You can accept what is, not passively, but actively. You can say, this is how things are. I am here. I will engage with reality on its terms. This acceptance is not defeat. It is maturity. It is the final stage of rebellion. You rebel against specific injustices that can be changed. You work to reduce suffering. You create meaning and beauty. You maintain solidarity with others. But you also accept the background conditions against which all this occurs: absurdity, mortality, meaninglessness. Think of Sisyphus again. We imagined him happy. But what does his happiness feel like? Not giddy joy, not excitement. Perhaps something closer to peace. He is at peace with his task. He has stopped resisting it internally. He pushes the rock because that is what he does. The struggle has become his life, and he has made peace with that life. This peace is not resignation. Sisyphus does not stop pushing. He continues his effort, but he has stopped suffering over the futility of the effort. He has accepted the condition completely. And in that acceptance, he finds a strange freedom. You can experience this in your own life. There are things you cannot change: your mortality, your past, the basic structure of existence. You can struggle against these internally, resenting them, denying them, wishing they were otherwise. This internal struggle creates suffering, or you can accept them, not happily necessarily, but completely. You will die. You cannot change your past. Existence is absurd. These are facts. Fighting against facts is futile. Accepting them frees energy for engaging with what can be changed. This is what the sound of silence represents: the quieting of internal resistance to reality, the cessation of the constant argument with existence, the peace that comes from accepting what is and working within those constraints rather than exhausting yourself fighting against them. Meditation traditions point towards similar insights. They teach that suffering comes not from pain itself, but from resistance to pain. When you accept what is, even pain, the suffering diminishes. The pain remains, but your relationship to it changes. Camus was not a meditation teacher, but he understood something similar. The absurd is painful. Recognizing meaninglessness hurts. Confronting mortality frightens, but resisting these recognitions, denying them, fighting against them internally, this creates additional suffering beyond the initial pain. When you accept the absurd completely, when you stop fighting reality, the additional suffering ceases. The recognition of meaninglessness remains. The awareness of mortality continues. But they no longer torture you. They simply are, like the weather, like the seasons, like any other fact of existence. And in this acceptance, in this silence, you find something unexpected. Gratitude, not for the absurd itself, not for death or meaninglessness, but for existence despite the absurd, for consciousness despite meaninglessness, for the strange privilege of being here, aware, capable of experience, even if that experience includes suffering. You did not ask to exist. You did not choose consciousness. It was given to you briefly in an indifferent universe. And despite everything, despite the absurd and death and suffering, there is something extraordinary about this gift. You can see color. You can hear sound. You can feel texture and temperature. You can think and imagine and remember. You can connect with others. You can experience beauty. You can create meaning even if that meaning is not cosmic. You can love even if love is temporary. These capacities are remarkable. For most of cosmic history, they did not exist. After you die, for you, they will not exist again. But right now, they exist. You are alive. You are conscious. You are experiencing this moment. The sound of silence is attending to this moment without the overlay of narrative or interpretation. Not thinking about the moment, but experiencing it directly. The simple fact of being here, breathing, perceiving, existing. This direct experience is always available. Most of the time we miss it because we are lost in thought, lost in narrative, lost in problems and plans and memories. But you can return to immediate experience at any moment. You can notice that you are breathing, you can feel your body, you can observe without judging. In these moments of direct experience, the absurd does not trouble you, not because it has been solved, but because you are not thinking about it. You are simply here, present, aware. And presence itself is complete. It requires nothing more than itself. This is the peace Camus points toward, not intellectual solution to philosophical problems, not emotional state of happiness or contentment, but simple presence, simple acceptance, simple being. You are here. This is how things are. You will engage with what you can engage with. You will do what you can do. You will experience what there is to experience. And then someday you will die. This is the pattern. This is the condition. And it is enough. Not enough in the sense of satisfying all desires, not enough in the sense of providing cosmic meaning, but enough in the sense of being what is, of being reality, of being the only existence available. You can accept this or resist it. Acceptance creates peace. Resistance creates suffering. Camus's philosophy, followed to its end, arrives here, at acceptance without hope, at engagement without illusion, at presence without need for justification, at peace with absurdity, not because absurdity has become acceptable, but because fighting against what cannot be changed is futile. The rock will roll down. You will push it up again. This will continue until it does not. And that is fine, not ideal, not what you would choose if you could design existence, but fine in the sense of being workable, bearable, sufficient. You have this life. You can live it with internal peace or internal conflict. You can accept what cannot be changed while working to change what can be. You can experience the invincible summer even in winter. You can find moments of joy even in suffering. You can create meaning even in meaninglessness. This is enough. This has to be enough, because this is what exists. And existence, even absurd existence, is something rather than nothing. Consciousness, even temporary consciousness, is extraordinary. Life, even mortal life, is precious. So breathe. Feel your breathing. Notice that you are here, now, aware. This simple fact is the foundation of everything. From here, you can engage with life. From here, you can push your rock. From here, you can love and create and rebel and experience. From here, in this silence, in this peace, in this acceptance, you can live fully, not forever, but now. And now is all that ever exists. The past is memory. The future is imagination. Only now is real. Only now is experience. Only now is life. And in this now, if you are quiet enough, if you are present enough, If you have made peace with absurdity enough, you can hear something beneath all the noise. Not cosmic meaning, not divine voice, not ultimate truth, just silence. The silence of existence itself, the silence that contains everything, the silence that you are, underneath all your thoughts and narratives and identities, the silence that remains when all questions cease. This silence is peace, final peace. Not because all problems are solved, but because you have stopped requiring solutions. Not because you have stopped caring, but because you have accepted what you care about within a context of acceptance of what you cannot change. You are here. You are absurd. You are mortal. You are conscious. You are alive. This is your condition. And from this condition, you will make what you make. You will experience what you experience. You will live your brief time. And then you will return to silence. But before that return, there is this: breath, sensation, presence, awareness. There is the invincible summer, there is the rock and the mountain, there is solidarity with others, there is rebellion and creation, there is love without eternity, there is meaning without cosmos, there is life, absurd life, precious life, your life. Live it, fully, presently, without hope but without despair, without illusion but without cynicism, without cosmic meaning but without nihilism. Live it as Sisyphus, happy in his struggle. Live it as Re, working without hope. Live it as the artist, creating against the void. Live it as yourself, conscious and mortal and here. This is Albert Camus' philosophy, not a system, not a solution, but an approach, a way of being, a response to existence. Accept the absurd, rebel against injustice, maintain solidarity, create meaning, experience joy, find the invincible summer, make peace with what cannot be changed. And in that peace, in that silence, in that acceptance, live. Simply live.